Your virgin body is too small, but I'll breed you anyway, the massive cowboy told his trembling bride, except he never said those words. The town did. In 1884 Montana, when Lydia Moore became Mrs. Cole Tanner to save her uncle from ruin, everyone whispered she wouldn't survive her wedding night with Bull Tanner. They were wrong about everything. This is the true story of how the smallest woman in Silver Creek tamed the biggest man in the West. Stay until the end and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The cards hit the table with a sound like coffin nails. Lydia Moore stood in the shadows of the Silver Creek saloon, her small frame pressed against the doorway where the lamplight couldn't quite reach her. Through the haze of cigar smoke and whiskey fumes, she watched her uncle's face crumble as he laid down his final hand. 3 sevens. Not enough. Never enough. Across the poker table sat Cole Tanner, and even sitting down, the man looked like a mountain that had decided to wear a black Stetson and grow a beard. His shoulders were so broad they blocked the man sitting behind him from view. His hands, rough and scarred from a lifetime of ranch work, dwarfed the playing cards he held like they were postage stamps. "That's it then, Moore," said Jake Hendricks, the weasel-faced man who'd been circling her uncle's debt for months. "Your ranch, your cattle, and—" His eyes slid toward Lydia with a hunger that made her skin crawl. "The girl! All of it goes to settlement. You got nothing left to bet." Samuel Moore's weathered hand shook as he reached for his glass. At 63, he'd worked that land for 40 years, raised Lydia after her parents died of fever when she was 6. The ranch was all they had, all she'd ever known. "There's got to be another way," Samuel's voice cracked. "Give me time. I'll work it off. Time's what you don't have," Hendricks cut in, leaning forward. "But I'll tell you what. I'll forgive half the debt if you throw in the girl. She's small, but I've always liked them delicate." Lydia's stomach turned. She'd known Hendricks was a snake, but hearing him talk about her like livestock made bile rise in her throat. She took a step forward, ready to tell him exactly where he could shove his offer, when a voice like thunder rolling across the plains stopped everyone cold. "The girl's not on the table." Cole Tanner hadn't moved, but somehow his presence had expanded to fill the entire saloon. Every man in the room felt it. The piano player's hands froze mid-song. Even Hendricks, who feared nothing and no one, seemed to shrink back into his chair. "This ain't your business, Tanner," Hendricks managed, though his voice had lost its edge. "I'm making it my business." Cole's dark eyes, the color of coffee without cream, fixed on Hendricks with an intensity that could nail a man to the wall. "Moore owes you money, not his niece. There's laws against what you're suggesting, even out here." "Laws?" Hendricks laughed, but it sounded hollow. "You going to enforce them, Bull? You and what army?" The nickname hung in the air. Bull Tanner. They'd called him that since he was 15 years old and threw a grown man through a saloon window for beating a horse. 20 years later, at 35, Cole had earned that name 100 times over. Not for cruelty, the man was known for his fairness, but for sheer, overwhelming physical power. He stood 6'7" in his boots, weighed close to 300 pounds of solid muscle, and there wasn't a man in Montana Territory who'd voluntarily pick a fight with him. Cole stood up. The movement was slow, deliberate, like a mountain deciding to relocate. His head nearly brushed the saloon ceiling beams. Men at nearby tables pushed their chairs back, creating space, creating distance. In the corner, someone whispered a prayer. "I don't need an army," Cole said quietly. "And you know it." Hendricks swallowed hard. "Fine. Fine, but the debt still stands. Moore still owes, and if he can't pay, I'll cover it." Every head in the saloon turned. Samuel Moore's face went white. Lydia's heart stopped beating, then started again at double speed. She knew what that meant. She knew what Cole Tanner's ranch could afford and what it couldn't. The amount her uncle owed would cripple even a successful operation like Cole's. "All of it?" Hendricks couldn't hide his surprise. "That's nearly $4,000, Tanner. I know what it is." Cole reached into his coat and pulled out a leather fold, extracting a banknote and sliding it across the table. "That's half. You'll have the rest by month's end. Moore's debt is settled. The ranch stays with him, the cattle too, and the girl," his eyes flickered toward the doorway where Lydia stood frozen, "isn't part of any deal, ever." Samuel Moore buried his face in his hands. "Cole, I can't ever pay you back. You know I can't." "I know. Cole gathered his winnings. What little he'd won didn't even dent what he'd just promised to pay. But there is something you can do. The saloon went quiet again. Outside, a horse whinnied. A tumbleweed scratched against the building's side. Lydia's hands gripped the doorframe so hard her knuckles went white. Cole Tanner turned, and for the first time that night, looked directly at her. He had a hard face, all angles and weathered leather, but his eyes were different, softer than she'd expected. Sad, almost. Like he'd already apologized for what he was about to say. "I want to marry your niece." The words landed like dynamite in a canyon. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered on the floor, and nobody moved to clean it up. Hendricks started laughing, a mean, sharp sound that cut through the tension. Other men joined in, nervous laughter that spread like wildfire. "Marry her?" Hendricks wheezed. "Jesus Christ, Tanner, you'll kill her. Look at you, then look at her. That little thing wouldn't survive the wedding night. She's barely 5 feet tall and probably don't weigh more than a sack of grain." "That's enough," Cole's voice cut through the laughter like a blade. But the damage was done. More men were laughing now, slapping tables, making crude jokes about splitting kindling and breaking horses. Lydia felt her face burning, felt tears prickling behind her eyes, but she refused to cry, refused to give them the satisfaction. Samuel Moore stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "Lydia, outside now." She followed him into the cool Montana night, her uncle's hand shaking as he gripped her arm. The moon was full, casting silver light across the dusty street. From inside the saloon she could still hear the laughter, still hear the jokes about her body, her size, her supposed fragility. "You can't," Samuel said, his voice breaking. "You can't marry him, Lydia. I won't ask it of you. We'll find another way. We'll sell everything, move somewhere else, start over." "With what?" Lydia kept her voice steady, even though her whole world was spinning. "Uncle Samuel, you heard him. $4,000. That's everything. That's the ranch, our future, our lives. And he's offering to pay it just to marry me. Because no other woman will have him." Samuel's words came out harsh, desperate. "Lydia, honey, he's too big. Everyone knows it. He had a wife before, years ago, and she left him, ran off to California because she was scared of him. The man can't control his own strength. He's broken bones just shaking hands. And you're so small." "I'm strong," Lydia interrupted. "Not strong enough for this." Her uncle grabbed her shoulders, looked her dead in the eye. "I love you like you were my own daughter. I raised you, taught you everything I know. I'd rather lose the ranch, lose everything, than lose you. And if you marry Bull Tanner, that's what'll happen. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but eventually. Lydia, eventually he'll forget himself, and you'll pay the price." She should have been terrified. Every logical part of her brain was screaming that her uncle was right, that marrying Cole Tanner was suicide. But there was another part, a stubborn, fierce part that had survived losing her parents, survived growing up the smallest girl in a territory full of rough men and rougher circumstances, that refused to accept defeat. "What's my alternative?" she asked quietly. "Hendricks?" Samuel's face twisted. "I'd kill him first. Then you'd hang." Lydia pulled away from her uncle's grip, wrapping her arms around herself. The night air was cold against her skin. "Cole Tanner offered us a way out. Maybe it's not perfect, maybe it's dangerous, but it's honest. He didn't have to do this. He could have bought the ranch out from under us, taken everything legal and proper. Instead, he's paying our debt and asking for something in return. That's more than most men would do. He's asking for you." Samuel's voice cracked. "My little girl. I'm not a little girl anymore." Lydia was 22, though people often mistook her for younger. At 4'11" and barely 95 pounds, she'd spent her whole life being underestimated, treated like something fragile that needed protecting. "I can make my own choices." "This isn't a choice, it's a sacrifice." Maybe it was. Lydia looked up at the stars, at the vast Montana sky that had watched over her entire life. She thought about the ranch, about the cattle with her mother's brand on them, about the little house where she'd learned to read and ride and shoot. She thought about her uncle, who'd given up everything to raise her, who'd never remarried because he was too busy being father and mother both. And she thought about Cole Tanner's eyes. Sad. Lonely. Nothing like the monster everyone made him out to be. I'll talk to him, she said finally. Lydia, I'll talk to him, she repeated, firmer this time, and then I'll decide. She left her uncle standing in the street and walked back into the saloon. The laughter died the moment she entered. Cole Tanner was still standing, still a mountain among men, but now he looked uncertain, vulnerable even, though that seemed impossible for someone his size. Miss Moore, he said, and his voice was gentler than she'd expected. I apologize. I should have spoken to you first, asked you private. Not like this. Not with... He gestured vaguely at the other men, who were watching like spectators at a hanging. Everyone out, Lydia said. Nobody moved. I said out. Her voice was small, but it carried. This is between me and Mr. Tanner. The rest of you can take your crude jokes and filthy minds and get out of this saloon before I start naming names to your wives. That got them moving. Hendricks tried to protest, but one look from Cole shut him up. Within minutes, the saloon was empty except for Lydia, Cole, and the bartender, who took one look at Lydia's face and decided to clean glasses at the far end of the bar. Lydia walked up to Cole Tanner, had to crane her neck back just to see his face properly. Up close, he was even bigger than she'd realized. His chest was like a barrel, his arms thicker than her thighs. One of his hands could probably wrap completely around her waist. The size difference was almost comical, almost terrifying. Why? She asked. Cole looked confused. Why what? Why do you want to marry me? Don't tell me it's love at first sight. Don't tell me you've been admiring me from afar. I want the truth. He was quiet for a long moment, then slowly sat down, making himself smaller, less overwhelming. Even sitting, he was taller than her standing. I need a wife, he said finally. I've needed one for years. My ranch is successful, but it's lonely. I eat dinner alone. I sleep alone. I built a house big enough for a family, but there's nobody in it except me and the memory of what I thought my life would be. You had a wife before. I did. Pain flickered across his face. Married when I was 25. She was a city girl from Denver, thought ranch life would be romantic. It wasn't. And He looked down at his massive hands. I tried to be gentle. I really did. But I'm not built for gentle. I broke the bed frame on our wedding night, not from what we did, just from rolling over wrong. Broke a chair just sitting down. Couldn't hold her hand without worrying I'd crush her fingers. She lasted 6 months before she left. Said living with me was like living with a natural disaster you could never predict. Lydia felt something twist in her chest. Not quite pity, but understanding. She knew what it was like to be trapped by your own body, by circumstances you couldn't control. I heard you broke a man's arm just shaking hands, she said. I did. Didn't mean to. He surprised me, grabbed my hand hard, and I reacted. His bones were brittle. Doc said it was a clean break, healed fine, but... Cole shook his head. Everyone remembers. Everyone talks. After a while, you start believing what they say about you. That you're dangerous. That you're a monster who can't be trusted around normal people. Is that what you think you are? A monster? Some days. He met her eyes, and there was such raw honesty there it took her breath away. But mostly, I'm just tired of being alone. Tired of eating meals in silence. Tired of having all this land, all this success, and nobody to share it with. When I saw your uncle tonight, saw what Hendricks was trying to do, I couldn't let that happen. You don't deserve to be sold off like livestock. Nobody does. So you offered to buy me yourself. No. Cole's voice was sharp. I offered to pay your uncle's debt in exchange for you considering marriage. That's different. If you say no, the debt's still paid. You and your uncle keep the ranch, and I'll find another way to manage. But if you say yes, he trailed off, looking uncertain again. If you say yes, I promise I'll do everything in my power to make you happy, to keep you safe, to never, ever hurt you. Everyone says you will. Everyone says I'm too small. You are small, Cole gestured at the space between them. Hell, Miss Moore, you're barely half my size. I'd be lying if I said that doesn't worry me. I'd be lying if I said I haven't spent the last hour trying to figure out how this could possibly work without me accidentally. He stopped, color rising in his cheeks. Without causing you harm. Lydia had never seen a man Cole Tanner's size blush before. It was oddly endearing. "May I ask you something personal?" she said. "Anything. Your first wife, on your wedding night. Did you hurt her?" Cole's jaw tightened. "No, I was careful, probably too careful. Took hours just to—" He cleared his throat. "She was fine, physically fine. It was everything else that broke her. The isolation, the constant worry, living with someone who could accidentally crush her if I rolled over wrong in my sleep." "But you didn't." "No, but I could have. That's what she couldn't live with. The possibility." Lydia understood that. Fear of what might happen was sometimes worse than the thing itself, but she'd spent her whole life refusing to let fear control her. When her parents died, everyone said she'd never survive without a mother to teach her women's work. She'd learned anyway. When the ranch fell on hard times, everyone said a tiny girl like her couldn't handle cattle or horses. She'd proven them wrong. Maybe she could prove them wrong about this too. "If I agreed to marry you," she said slowly, "what would our life look like?" Cole seemed surprised by the question, like he hadn't expected to get this far. "You'd be mistress of the Tanner Ranch. It's bigger than your uncle's spread. About 2,000 acres, 100 head of cattle, good water rights. The house is solid, built it myself. 3 bedrooms, proper kitchen, even got one of those fancy stoves from Chicago. You'd have help. I've got 2 ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse, and their wives come by to clean and cook sometimes. You could keep doing that, or do something else entirely. Whatever makes you happy. And you? What would you expect from me?" "Companionship." The word came out soft, almost embarrassed. "Someone to talk to at dinner. Someone who could help me remember I'm human, not just a workhorse. And eventually, if you were willing, children. A family." There it was. The thing everyone had been laughing about in the saloon, the thing that had made her uncle look like she'd just signed her own death warrant. Cole Tanner wanted children, and everyone in Silver Creek knew that a man his size and a woman hers trying to create life together was a recipe for disaster. "I could die in childbirth," Lydia said bluntly. "You could." Cole didn't sugarcoat it. "Women die in childbirth all the time, big or small. But I won't lie to you. The risk would be higher. A lot higher. I've thought about that. Thought about it so much I nearly didn't make the offer tonight. But then I thought, maybe there's a woman out there brave enough to try. Strong enough. In all the ways that matter. And when I saw you standing in that doorway, saw the way you looked ready to fight Hendricks yourself." He smiled, sad and hopeful at once. "I thought maybe you were that woman. Or maybe I'm just desperate. Maybe." Cole spread his huge hands. "But desperation and bravery look pretty similar from the outside. Either way, the choice is yours. Marry me, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that choice. Say no, and I'll respect that too. Your uncle keeps the ranch either way." Lydia looked at him, really looked at him. Past the size, past the reputation, past the fear. She saw a lonely man who'd been judged his whole life for circumstances he couldn't control. She saw someone who'd made her an offer that was terrifying and generous in equal measure. She saw the possibility of a different life. Maybe not an easy life, maybe not a safe life, but a life with someone who understood what it meant to be underestimated. "I need time to think," she said. "Of course. And if I say yes, we do this properly. Courtship. A real wedding, not just some quick ceremony to seal a deal. I want my uncle to give me away without feeling like he's sending me to slaughter. Whatever you need. And one more thing." Lydia stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head all the way back to see his face. "Don't ever lie to me. Not about the risks, not about what you want, not about anything. If this marriage happens, it happens with honesty. Understood?" "Understood." Cole stood up, and once again Lydia was struck by just how massive he was. But she didn't step back. Didn't flinch. "Miss Moore, for what it's worth, I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. You barely know me. I know you walked into a saloon full of drunk men making crude jokes and demanded they leave. I know you're standing here negotiating with me instead of running scared. I know you're considering a marriage that everyone says will kill you, and you're doing it to save your uncle's ranch." He smiled, and it transformed his whole face, made him look younger, gentler. "That's brave. Maybe the bravest thing I've ever seen." Lydia felt heat rise in her cheeks. She wasn't used to compliments, especially not from men who looked at her like she was something more than fragile. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow," she said. "Meet me at the ranch, noon." "I'll be there." She left him standing in the empty saloon and walked out into the night. Her uncle was waiting, pacing back and forth in the street like a caged animal. "Well?" he demanded. Lydia took his arm and started walking toward their wagon. "Well," she said, "I think I'm going to marry Bull Tanner." Samuel Moore stopped dead. "Lydia, no, please. We'll find another way." "There is no other way." She kept walking, pulling him along. "But Uncle Samuel, I don't think he's the monster everyone says he is. I think he's just a lonely man who deserves a chance, and I think I'm strong enough to give him that chance." "You could die." "I could die tomorrow falling off a horse. I could die next week from influenza. I could die an old woman in my sleep." Lydia looked up at the stars again, at the vast Montana sky. "But I won't die from being too small or too scared to take a risk on something real." They rode home in silence, the wagon creaking beneath them, the Montana night spreading out in all directions. Lydia thought about Cole Tanner's hands, big enough to crush her, but careful enough to handle playing cards. She thought about his eyes, sad and hopeful. She thought about what it would be like to wake up next to a man who could accidentally break her, and choosing to trust him anyway. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was the biggest gamble of her life. And as the ranch came into view, Lydia Moore made her decision. Tomorrow at noon, she'd tell Cole Tanner yes. Tomorrow at noon, she'd agree to become his wife. Tomorrow at noon, she'd prove to everyone in Silver Creek and to herself that being small didn't mean being weak, and that sometimes the biggest courage comes in the smallest packages. The next morning dawned clear and bright, but Lydia barely noticed. She'd spent most of the night lying awake, alternating between certainty and terror, between imagining a future with Cole Tanner and imagining her own funeral. By the time the sun rose, she'd made her choice 100 different ways, and always came back to the same answer. Yes. She was going to say yes. "You sure about this?" her uncle asked over breakfast. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "It's not too late to change your mind." "I'm sure." Lydia pushed eggs around her plate. Her stomach was too twisted to eat. "Uncle Samuel, I know you're worried. I know everyone thinks this is insane. But I've spent my whole life being told I'm too small, too weak, too fragile. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being treated like glass." "Glass breaks," Samuel said quietly. "So does iron if you hit it hard enough." Lydia set down her fork. "I'm not going into this blind. I know the risks. But I also know that Cole Tanner paid $4,000 to keep us from losing everything. He didn't have to do that. He could have bought this ranch for half that amount and sent us packing. Instead, he offered us a way out. That means something. It means he wants something. He wants a wife. He wants a family. He wants someone to share his life with." Lydia stood up, started clearing dishes. "Is that really so terrible?" Samuel was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Your mother was my little sister. When she and your father died, I promised myself I'd take care of you, keep you safe, give you the life they would have wanted for you. And now I feel like I'm failing that promise, like I'm sending you into danger because I was too stupid to quit while I was ahead at poker. This isn't your fault." "Feels like it is." Lydia walked over to her uncle, put her small hands on his weathered face. "Listen to me. You raised me. You taught me to be strong, to think for myself, to never back down from a challenge. You taught me that being small doesn't mean being helpless. So trust that now. Trust that I know what I'm doing." "Do you?" She smiled, though it felt shaky. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." At 11:30, Lydia started getting ready. She didn't have anything fancy. Ranch life didn't call for silk dresses or jewelry, but she put on her best dress, a simple blue cotton that her mother had made years ago. It was too big in the shoulders and too long in the hem, but it was clean and pressed. She brushed out her long dark hair, pinned it up the way her mother used to wear it, looked at herself in the mirror and saw a tiny woman with green eyes that were too big for her face and a stubborn set to her jaw that had gotten her in trouble more times than she could count. "You can do this," she told her reflection. "You can do this." At 5 minutes to noon, she heard hoofbeats. Through the window, she saw Cole Tanner riding up on the biggest horse she'd ever seen. Had to be. to carry a man his size. He dismounted with surprising grace for someone so large, tied his horse to the fence, and stood there looking at the house like he wasn't sure if he should knock or run. Lydia took a deep breath, smoothed her dress, and walked outside before she could talk herself out of it. Cole turned when he heard the door, and something flickered across his face. Surprise? Appreciation? Fear? Lydia couldn't tell. He'd cleaned up too, wore a fresh shirt, had shaved, combed his hair back. Looked less like a dangerous outlaw and more like a nervous suitor. "Miss Moore," he said, his voice carrying across the yard. "You look small," she offered. "Beautiful." The word came out soft, sincere. "You look beautiful." Lydia felt her cheeks warm. Nobody had called her beautiful before. Cute, maybe. Small and delicate, certainly. But beautiful? That was new. "Thank you," she managed. "You look less terrifying than usual." He laughed at that, a deep rumbling sound that seemed to come from his chest. "Is that a compliment?" "I'm still deciding." They stood there in the yard, the Montana sun beating down, neither quite sure how to proceed. Finally, Cole cleared his throat. "I know you said you'd give me your answer today, but before you do, I want you to see something." He gestured toward his horse. "Will you ride with me? There's a place I want to show you. On my ranch." "Our ranch," Lydia corrected. "If I say yes." "Right. Our ranch." He looked nervous again, like he hadn't quite processed that she might actually agree. "Will you come?" Lydia hesitated. Riding with him meant sitting close, meant trusting him not to accidentally break her just from proximity. But if she was going to marry this man, she'd have to trust him eventually. Might as well start now. "All right," she said, "but I should warn you, I don't ride side saddle." "I wouldn't expect you to." Cole walked over to his horse, then turned back. May I help you mount?" This was it, the first test. Lydia nodded, and before she could change her mind, Cole's hands were on her waist. She'd expected it to hurt, expected his grip to be crushing, but his touch was surprisingly gentle. He lifted her like she weighed nothing, which, compared to him, she basically did, and set her carefully on the horse's back. Then he swung up behind her, and suddenly Lydia was surrounded by him. His chest against her back, his arms on either side as he took the reins, his sheer size making her feel smaller than ever. But not helpless, not fragile, just small. They rode in silence for a while, heading deeper into Tannerland. Lydia had been on this property before, but not this far in. The ranch stretched for miles, rolling hills and green valleys and good cattle country. She could see why Cole had built his life here. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. "You'll see." They crested a hill, and Lydia's breath caught. Below them sat a house unlike anything she'd ever seen in Montana. It was big, had to be for a man Cole's size, but it was also beautiful. 2 stories, white-painted wood, a porch that wrapped around the whole building. Real glass windows, a stone chimney, even flower boxes under the windows, though they were empty now. "You built this?" Lydia asked. "Every plank," pride-colored Cole's voice. "Took me 3 years. Had help with the heavy stuff, but most of it I did myself. Built it big enough for a family, for the life I thought I'd have." He rode down the hill and stopped in front of the house, helped Lydia down with the same careful gentleness, then stood there looking at his creation like he wasn't sure what to do next. "Can I see inside?" Lydia asked. Relief flashed across his face. "Of course, that's why I brought you here." He led her up the porch steps. The boards didn't even creak under his weight, which meant they were built solid, and opened the front door. Inside was even more impressive. The main room was huge, with a fireplace big enough to roast a whole pig, furniture that actually looked proportional to Cole's size, and yes, one of those fancy Chicago stoves in the kitchen area. There were bookshelves lined with actual books, rugs on the floor, curtains on the windows. It looked like a home, not just a house. "Upstairs, there's 3 bedrooms, Cole said, watching her take it all in. "Master bedroom is, well, it's big. Had to be. But there's 2 others. For children. If we—" He trailed off, color rising in his cheeks again. "If we're blessed that way." Lydia walked through the space, touching the furniture, the walls, The things Cole had built with his own hands. Everything was solid, strong, built to last, like the man himself. "It's lonely," she said finally. Cole looked stricken. "I know it's not fancy like city houses." "No." Lydia turned to face him. "I mean, it feels lonely. All this space, all this beauty, and nobody here to appreciate it. Nobody to fill it with life and noise and mess. That's what's wrong with it. Not the house itself, just the emptiness." Understanding dawned in Cole's dark eyes. "I've been alone here for 5 years. Built it right after my wife left. Thought maybe if I made something beautiful enough, someone would want to stay. But," he gestured helplessly at the empty rooms, "nobody ever did. I would." The words were out before Lydia could stop them. Cole froze, staring at her like he wasn't sure he'd heard right. "You... what?" "I would stay." Lydia's heart was pounding, but her voice was steady. "If I married you. If we did this. I wouldn't run. I'm not afraid of you, Cole Tanner. I'm not afraid of this house, or this ranch, or what everyone says will happen. I'm only afraid of spending the rest of my life wondering what might have been if I'd been brave enough to try." Cole's face did something complicated. Relief and joy and fear all mixed together. "Miss Moore, Lydia, are you saying yes? Are you agreeing to marry me?" "I am." She walked over to him, had to crane her neck all the way back to see his face. "But I have conditions." "Anything. We do this right, proper courtship. I want time to know you before we're married. I want the town to see us together so they stop thinking you're a monster and I'm your victim. And when we do marry," she took a deep breath, "when we do marry, I want it to be because we both believe this can work. Not because we're desperate or trapped, but because we genuinely think we can build a life together." "How long?" Cole asked. "For the courtship?" 3 months. He looked relieved. "I was worried you'd say a year." 3 months is long enough to know someone's character, long enough for the town gossips to move on to something else, long enough for my uncle to accept that this is happening." Lydia smiled. "And short enough that we can still marry before winter sets in." "Before winter?" Cole seemed to be processing this like he couldn't quite believe it was real. "So we'd marry in September, October?" "Early October, after the harvest." Lydia had already thought this through. "It's practical. Gives us time to prepare, time for the ranch work to settle. And it means we'd have the winter to adjust to each other." She didn't say what they were both thinking, that winter would give them privacy, time away from prying eyes and crude jokes while they figured out how to be husband and wife, time to navigate the physical reality of their size difference without the whole town speculating about it. 3 months, Cole repeated like he was testing the words. "And then you'll marry me." "Yes." He smiled then, a real smile that made him look almost handsome. "Lydia Moore, you're either the bravest woman alive or the craziest." "Maybe both." "Maybe both," he agreed. Then, hesitantly, he held out his hand. "Partners?" Lydia looked at his hand. It was huge, scarred, calloused from years of hard work. It was the hand that everyone said would crush her, the hand that could break bones by accident, the hand that had built this beautiful house and worked this land and paid $4,000 to keep her uncle from losing everything. She put her small hand in his. His grip was gentle, warm, careful. "Partners," she said. And in that moment, standing in the empty house that wouldn't be empty much longer, Lydia Moore and Cole Tanner made a promise to each other, to try, to trust, to believe that maybe, just maybe, size didn't matter as much as courage, and that the biggest love stories sometimes came in the most unlikely packages. Outside, the Montana sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the land that would soon be hers too. Inside, 2 people who didn't fit any conventional mold stood hand in hand, beginning a courtship that would scandalize the town and rewrite their own stories. 3 months. 3 months to prove everyone wrong. 3 months to fall in love. And Lydia Moore had never backed down from a challenge yet. The news spread through Silver Creek faster than wildfire in August. By the time Lydia and Cole rode back into town that afternoon, half the population was already whispering about it. The other half was placing bets on how long she'd survive. Lydia heard the murmurs as they passed the general store, saw the stares as they rode down Main Street. Mrs. Henderson actually crossed herself like Lydia was already a ghost. "Let them talk," Cole said quietly, his voice rumbling against her back where she sat in front of him on the horse. "They'll get tired of it eventually." "Will they?" Lydia wasn't so sure. Small towns had long memories and hungry appetites for scandal. "If they don't, I'll make them." There was steel in his voice now, the tone that reminded everyone why they called him Bull. "Nobody disrespects my wife. Not now, not ever. I'm not your wife yet. You will be." He said it with such certainty that Lydia almost believed nothing could go wrong. They stopped at her uncle's ranch, and Cole helped her down with the same careful gentleness he'd shown all day. Samuel was waiting on the porch, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the few hours they'd been gone. "Well?" he asked, though Lydia suspected he already knew the answer from the way Cole was looking at her. "We're engaged," Lydia said simply. "We'll marry in October, after the harvest." Samuel's face crumpled. For a moment, Lydia thought he might cry, but he pulled himself together with visible effort. 3 months. That's not much time." "It's enough." Lydia walked up the porch steps and took her uncle's hands. "Uncle Samuel, I know you're scared, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" He looked at her for a long moment, then passed her to where Cole stood, hat in hand, looking uncomfortable and hopeful at the same time. "You hurt her," Samuel said, his voice carrying across the yard. "And I don't care how big you are. I'll find a way to make you pay." "If I hurt her," Cole replied, "I'll help you do it." That seemed to satisfy Samuel, or at least quiet him for the moment. He pulled Lydia into a fierce hug, whispered against her hair, "Your mother would have skinned me alive for this." "Mama would have liked him," Lydia whispered back. "She always said the best men were the ones who looked scary but had gentle hearts." "Did she say what happens when those gentle hearts come in giant bodies?" "She said love finds a way." Lydia pulled back, smiled through the tears that were threatening. "And I'm choosing to believe her." The next 3 months became the strangest courtship Silver Creek had ever witnessed. Cole came calling every Sunday after church, sitting awkwardly in Samuel's small parlor, while Lydia served coffee in cups that looked like dollhouse furniture in his massive hands. He brought gifts, wildflowers picked from the high meadows, a book of poetry he thought she might like, once a kitten he'd found abandoned near his barn. "Thought you could use some company," he said, handing her the tiny orange ball of fur. "When you're not busy worrying about marrying me." Lydia had laughed and named the kitten Goliath, which made Cole smile in a way that transformed his whole face. The kitten became their shared joke, this tiny creature that had no idea it was supposed to be afraid of the giant man who'd rescued it. On Wednesdays, Cole took Lydia riding across his ranch, their ranch, he always corrected. He showed her the boundaries, the water sources, the best grazing land, taught her the names of his ranch hands and their families, introduced her to the cattle like they were old friends. "That one's Bessie," he said, pointing to a massive red cow. "Had her since she was a calf. Stubborn as the day is long, but she's the best mother in the herd. And that's Thunder. He's the bull, gentle unless you threaten his ladies." "Like someone else I know," Lydia said, and Cole had the grace to look embarrassed. But it was the small moments that surprised her most. The way Cole always made sure she had the comfortable chair. How he'd stop mid-sentence if he saw her struggling to reach something, lifting her effortlessly so she could get it herself. The time he'd found her trying to hang curtains in her uncle's house and had held her steady on his shoulders while she worked, his hands carefully gripping her ankles, patient as stone while she measured and pinned. "You don't have to do this," she'd said, looking down at the top of his head. "I can manage with a ladder." "I know you can." His voice drifted up. "But this is easier. And safer. And—" He'd paused, then added quietly, "I like helping you." The town watched all of this with a mixture of fascination and horror. At the church social in August, Lydia overheard Mrs. Peterson telling a group of women that it was like watching a grizzly bear court a rabbit. "You know it won't end well, but you can't look away." Lydia had walked right up to them, smiled sweetly, and said, Actually, Mrs. Peterson, it's more like watching people mind their own business. You should try it sometime. The women had gasped, scandalized, but later that evening Cole had pulled her aside behind the church, fighting laughter. Did you really say that to Eleanor Peterson? I did. She's the biggest gossip in 3 counties. I know. Lydia felt a flicker of worry. Did I make things worse? You made things perfect. Cole was grinning now. She's been spreading rumors about me for years. About time someone stood up to her. Cole, people are going to talk no matter what we do. Then let's give them something to talk about. And before Lydia could ask what he meant, Cole had swept her into his arms, actually swept her, lifting her clear off the ground, and kissed her. It was their first kiss. Lydia had wondered what it would be like kissing a man so much bigger than her. She'd worried about logistics, about angles, about whether their size difference would make even something as simple as a kiss awkward. She needn't have worried. Cole kissed like he did everything else, carefully, thoroughly, with complete focus. His huge hands cradled her face like she was something precious, his mouth gentle against hers, patient and questioning, asking permission even as he took it. And Lydia, suspended in his arms with her feet dangling above the ground, kissed him back with all the pent-up emotion of the past 2 months, all the fear and hope and stubborn determination that had brought them to this moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lydia was dimly aware that they'd had an audience. Half the church social had witnessed their kiss. Mrs. Peterson looked like she might faint. The younger girls were whispering behind their hands, and Samuel Moore stood on the church steps, looking resigned and worried and grudgingly accepting all at once. Well, Lydia said, still cradled in Cole's arms, I suppose that's given them something to talk about. Good. Cole set her down carefully, but kept one hand on her waist like he was afraid she might blow away. Let them see that I'm courting you proper, that this isn't some business arrangement or pity marriage, that I'm falling in love with you. Lydia's heart stopped. You're… what? Falling in love with you. Cole said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Have been since that first night in the saloon when you demanded everyone leave so we could talk private. Maybe even before that. Maybe from the moment I saw you standing in that doorway looking ready to fight the whole town if you had to. That's not love, Lydia managed. That's just admiration. Maybe it started that way. His thumb traced gentle circles on her waist, and Lydia could feel the warmth of his touch through her dress. But it's more now, the way you laugh at my terrible jokes, how you're not afraid to tell me when I'm being stupid, the way you look at my ranch like you're already planning how to make it better, how you named that damn kitten Goliath and thought it was hilarious. He smiled, soft and vulnerable. I'm falling in love with all of it, with you. Lydia should have been terrified. This was supposed to be a practical arrangement, a way to save her uncle's ranch and give Cole the family he wanted. Love was never part of the deal. Love made everything complicated, made the stakes higher, made the possibility of failure hurt so much more. But standing there in the twilight, with the sounds of the church social fading behind them and Cole's hand warm on her waist, Lydia realized something startling. She was falling in love with him too, with his gentleness despite his size, with the way he looked at her like she was brave instead of foolish, with his patience and his kindness and the way he'd spent 3 months proving to her that he could be trusted, that he would never, ever hurt her on purpose. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I. What if everyone's right? What if I'm too small and you're too big and this whole thing is just a disaster waiting to happen? Cole cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. Then we'll face it together, you and me. But Lydia, I don't think they're right. I think they're scared of what they don't understand. I think they see the size difference and can't imagine how it could work. But we're not them. We don't have to live by their rules or their fears. Easy for you to say. No, it's not. Pain flickered across his face. Every time I touch you, I'm terrified I'll hurt you. Every time we're together, I'm measuring every movement, every gesture, making sure I don't grab too hard or move too fast or forget my own strength. It's exhausting, and it's scary as hell. But I'm willing to live with that fear if it means I get to be with you. Lydia reached up, had to stand on her toes even though Cole was bending down, and kissed him again. Softer this time, slower. A promise instead of a question. October, she said when they broke apart. I'll marry you in October, and I promise to try, to trust, to believe that maybe love really can find a way. That's all I ask. They walked back to the church social hand in hand, and if people stared and whispered, neither of them cared anymore. They'd made their choice. The rest was just details. But the details, as it turned out, were more complicated than either of them had anticipated. The first problem came from Cole's ranch hands. Two men named Pete and Tom who'd worked for Cole for years and had been cautiously optimistic about his upcoming marriage, until they met Lydia. Boss, Pete said one afternoon when Lydia had ridden out to bring Cole lunch. Can I speak frank? Always, Cole said, though there was a warning note in his voice. The girl's too small. We all think it. Hell, the whole territory thinks it. Pete gestured at where Lydia was feeding sugar cubes to Cole's horse. She's a good woman. I can see that. But boss, you're going to kill her. Maybe not on purpose, maybe not right away, but eventually. And we like you too much to watch that happen. Cole's jaw tightened. Your concern is noted and dismissed. Boss, she's going to be my wife. Cole's voice dropped to that dangerous rumble that made grown men reconsider their life choices. The mistress of this ranch, and you will treat her with respect. If you can't do that, there are plenty of other ranches hiring. Pete held up his hands. No disrespect intended, just worried is all. Worry about your own business. But the damage was done. Lydia had heard the whole exchange, and that night when Cole rode her home, she was quieter than usual. What Pete said, she finally ventured. He's not wrong. He is wrong. Cole, I'm 95 pounds. You're what, 290? 300? About that. That's more than 3 times my weight, and you're over 1.5 feet taller than me. The logistics alone. We'll figure it out. Cole's arms tightened around her where she sat in front of him on the saddle. Lydia, do you trust me? I'm trying to. Then trust that I've thought about this. Trust that I'm not going into our marriage blind. I've been reading. He said it almost embarrassed. Medical books, books about relations between married people. I sent away to Chicago for them. The bookseller probably thinks I'm insane, but I don't care. I'm going to know everything I can about how to be with you without hurting you. Lydia twisted in the saddle to look at him. You sent away for books? 3 of them. Very educational. Very detailed. His ears were red. Also very embarrassing to read, but necessary. Despite everything, Lydia felt laughter bubbling up. You're reading medical books about how to bed your wife. I'm reading everything I can about how to keep you safe. There's a difference. And that was Cole Tanner in a nutshell. Terrifying to everyone else, but willing to humiliate himself ordering medical textbooks from Chicago just to make sure he didn't hurt the woman he loved. You're a good man, Lydia said softly. I'm trying to be the man you deserve. The second problem came from Lydia's own body. In late August, she got sick. Nothing serious, just a summer cold that laid her up for a week. But it was enough to make everyone's dire predictions seem more real. Mrs. Henderson brought soup and meaningful looks. The doctor who came to check on her pulled Samuel aside and spoke in low, urgent tones that Lydia could hear perfectly well through the wall. She's delicate, Sam. Always has been. And you're letting her marry a man who could sneeze and break her ribs. I'm saying this as your friend. Stop this wedding before it's too late. She's made her choice, Samuel said, but he sounded tired. Then she's choosing death. Lydia waited until the doctor left, then got out of bed despite her uncle's protests. She was weak and dizzy, but she managed to dress herself and make it to the porch before Cole arrived for his Wednesday visit. He took one look at her, and his face went white. You're sick. You should be in bed. I'm fine. You look like a strong wind would knock you over. He moved toward her, then stopped himself, hands flexing at his sides like he wanted to help but was afraid to touch her. Lydia, please, go inside. Rest. Not until we talk. She sat down on the porch steps, and after a moment, Cole sat beside her. Even sitting, he towered over her. People are saying I'm too delicate, that I'll never survive being your wife. People are always saying something. This time they might be right. Lydia coughed, hated how weak it sounded. Cole, I'm sick from a simple cold. What happens if I get pregnant? What happens when my body has to carry a baby that's likely to be huge? What happens if... Stop. Cole's voice was rough. Don't talk like that. We have to talk like that. We have to be realistic. Realistic. He laughed, but it was a bitter sound. You want realistic? Realistic is that I'm scared out of my mind. Realistic is that I lie awake every night thinking about all the ways I could accidentally hurt you. Realistic is that maybe everyone's right, and I'm being selfish wanting you when I could break you just by rolling over wrong in my sleep.
But then why are you doing this? Because I love you. The words burst out of him like he'd been holding them back too long. Because for the first time in my life, someone looks at me and doesn't see a monster or a freak or a disaster waiting to happen. You see me, Lydia, the real me. And I can't walk away from that, even if the smart thing would be to let you go. Lydia felt tears burning her eyes. I'm scared too. I know. But I'm not backing out. I know that too. Cole reached out slowly, telegraphing every movement, and took her hand. His palm dwarfed hers completely. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Both terrified, both stubborn, both refusing to listen to common sense. Maybe common sense is overrated. Or maybe we're idiots. Definitely idiots, Lydia agreed, and they both laughed, though it came out a little watery. They sat there on the porch as the sun set, hands linked, not talking, just being together. And Lydia thought that maybe this was what love looked like. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but choosing each other anyway. Choosing trust over fear. Choosing to try even when everyone said it was impossible. By September, the whole town had accepted that the wedding was actually happening. The church was booked. Mrs. Patterson, Mrs. Peterson's cousin, confusingly, had agreed to make Lydia's dress, though she'd sniffed and said it was against her better judgment. Samuel had stopped trying to talk Lydia out of it and started planning instead, determined that if his niece was going to marry Bull Tanner, she'd do it with her head held high and the whole territory watching. Cole had the house ready, new curtains in the windows, fresh paint on the walls, even flowers planted in those empty window boxes. He'd built a step stool for every room so Lydia could reach the high shelves.
Had furniture made that was smaller, more proportional to her size, so she wouldn't feel like a child in a giant's house. He thought of everything, and when Lydia saw it all during a final pre-wedding visit, she'd cried. I didn't mean to make you sad, Cole said, panicked by her tears. I'm not sad. I'm overwhelmed. Lydia wiped her eyes. You did all this for me? I did all this for us. He showed her the master bedroom, and Lydia's breath caught. The bed was enormous, had to be for a man Cole's size, but there were multiple pillows of different sizes, extra blankets, even a smaller mattress beside the big one. In case, Cole said quietly, you ever need space, or want to sleep separate, or if I'm snoring too loud, or... Lydia kissed him to shut him up. It's perfect. You sure? Because I can change anything. I can... Cole. She pulled back, looked him in the eye. It's perfect because you thought of me. Because you made space for both of us. Because you're trying so hard to make this work. I'll always try. He kissed her forehead, gentle as a whisper. That's my promise to you. No matter what happens, I'll always try. The week before the wedding, Cole's ex-wife showed up. Nobody expected it. Martha Tanner, Martha Caldwell now, remarried to a banker in San Francisco, arrived on the afternoon stage looking elegant and out of place in her city clothes. She asked directions to the Tanner Ranch, and within an hour, the news was all over town. Lydia heard about it from Mrs. Henderson, who seemed to take great pleasure in delivering the information. She's here to stop the wedding, mark my words. Going to tell that poor girl exactly what she's getting herself into. But when Martha showed up at Samuel's ranch the next day, it wasn't to stop anything. You must be Lydia, she said, extending a gloved hand. She was beautiful, tall, blonde, everything Lydia wasn't. I'm Martha, Cole's former wife. I know who you are. Lydia didn't take the offered hand. What do you want? To apologize. Martha seemed sincere, which was somehow worse than if she'd been cruel. And to warn you. But mostly to apologize. They sat in the parlor, awkward and tense. Martha folded her hands in her lap and looked at Lydia with something like pity.
I was 19 when I married Cole, she began, fresh from Denver, full of romantic notions about ranch life and strong men. I thought size meant strength, meant security. I was wrong. He didn't hurt you, Lydia said flatly. It wasn't a question. Not physically, but living with Cole, Martha shook her head. It's like living with an avalanche that might fall at any moment. You're constantly on edge, constantly vigilant. Every time he moves, you flinch. Every time he touches you, you hold your breath. After 6 months, I couldn't sleep. After a year, I couldn't breathe. I had to leave or lose myself entirely. That sounds like a you problem, not a Cole problem.
Martha's eyes sharpened.
You think you're different? Braver? Stronger?
I think I'm more honest. Lydia met her gaze steadily. You married Cole thinking you could change him, make him smaller, easier to manage. You wanted a fantasy. I'm marrying Cole knowing exactly who he is, size, strength, and all. He could kill you, Martha said bluntly.
He could. He won't. There's a difference. Is there? Martha leaned forward. Lydia, I'm not here to be cruel. I'm here because I know what it's like to be in your position. Everyone telling you it won't work. Everyone predicting disaster. And the worst part is they might be right. Can you live with that? Can you live knowing that every day might be the day he forgets himself? Lydia stood up. I think you should leave. I'm trying to help. You're trying to make me as scared as you were. But I'm not you, Martha. I don't flinch when Cole moves. I don't hold my breath when he touches me. I trust him.
And if that trust is misplaced, then I'll deal with the consequences. But I won't let your fear become mine. Martha stood too, gathering her gloves and purse. At the door she paused. He loved me, you know, Cole. When we married, he tried so hard to make me happy, but it wasn't enough. Love wasn't enough to overcome the fear. I hope it's different for you, I really do, because if anyone deserves happiness, it's Cole Tanner. He's a good man trapped in an impossible body. No, Lydia said quietly. He's a good man, period. The body is just part of who he is, and I love all of it. Martha left, and Lydia stood in the doorway watching her go. That night, when Cole came for dinner, she told him about the visit. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I didn't know she was coming. I would have warned you. Cole, stop apologizing. She came to warn me, and I listened. And then I told her to leave because I don't need her fear. Lydia took his hand. But I need you to understand something. This marriage is going to be hard. People are always going to doubt us, always going to predict disaster. And maybe they're right. Maybe this is impossible. But I'd rather try and fail than spend the rest of my life wondering what if. What if we don't fail? Cole asked. Then we prove everyone wrong. Wouldn't that be something? The wedding was scheduled for October 15th, and as the day approached, Lydia found herself alternating between excitement and terror. She tried on her dress, a simple white cotton that Mrs. Patterson had grudgingly admitted looked beautiful, and practiced walking down the aisle in Samuel's parlor. She packed her few belongings into a trunk Cole had brought over, said goodbye to the little house she'd lived in her whole life. The night before the wedding, she couldn't sleep. She sat on the porch watching the stars, wrapped in a blanket, trying to quiet her racing thoughts. Tomorrow, she'd become Mrs. Cole Tanner. Tomorrow, everything would change. Can't sleep either? Samuel's voice came from behind her. Too much thinking. He sat beside her, and they were quiet for a long time. Finally, Samuel said, Your mother would be proud of you. Would she? Or would she think I'm crazy? Both, probably, he smiled. But she always said you had more courage than sense. Used to scare her half to death, the risks you'd take. Climbing trees you were too small for, riding horses that were too wild, arguing with boys twice your size. He paused. I guess marrying Bull Tanner is just one more impossible thing you're determined to do. I love him, Uncle Samuel. I know you do, honey. I can see it. And he loves you. That's clear as day. I just hope... He trailed off. Hope what? That love's enough. That your courage and his gentleness can overcome everything else. Because if they can't... Samuel's voice cracked. If they can't, I don't know how I'll forgive myself for letting this happen. Lydia leaned against her uncle's shoulder. It's not your choice to make. It's mine. And I'm making it with my eyes wide open. They sat together until the stars began to fade, until the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. Lydia's wedding day had begun. The ceremony was set for noon at the Silver Creek Church, and by 11:30 the building was packed. Not because people were happy about the wedding, but because nobody wanted to miss what was surely going to be the most talked about event in Montana Territory history. Lydia stood in the church's small back room, dressed in her white gown, her hands shaking as she tried to pin up her hair. Mrs. Patterson had offered to help, but Lydia had declined. She needed this moment alone, this last moment as just Lydia Moore before she became someone's wife. There was a soft knock on the door. "Come in," she called, expecting Samuel. Instead, Cole ducked through the doorway. "You're not supposed to see me before the wedding," Lydia said, but she was smiling. "I know, but I needed—" He stopped, seemed to drink in the sight of her. "You look beautiful. More beautiful than I imagined. You clean up pretty well yourself." And he did. He wore a black suit that must have been specially made, his hair combed back, his beard trimmed. He looked less like Bull Tanner and more like Cole. Just a man about to marry the woman he loved. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "Me too. What if I mess this up? What if everyone's right and I hurt you and—" Lydia crossed to him, took his hands in hers. "Cole Tanner, listen to me. In a few minutes, I'm going to walk down that aisle. My uncle is going to give me away. The preacher is going to say some words, and then I'm going to promise to be your wife, not because I have to, not because I'm desperate or trapped, but because I choose you. Every day, every moment, I choose you. So stop being afraid. Stop listening to everyone else, and marry me." He looked down at her, this tiny woman who'd turned his whole world upside down, and smiled. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Now get out of here before my uncle finds you and shoots you for bad luck." Cole laughed, kissed her forehead, and ducked back out of the room. Lydia took a deep breath, checked her reflection one last time, and decided she was ready. Samuel appeared a moment later, offering his arm. "You sure about this, honey?" "Never been more sure of anything." They stood at the back of the church, waiting for the music to start. Through the open doors, Lydia could see the pews packed with people, some curious, some concerned, some clearly hoping for disaster. And at the front, standing beside the preacher, was Cole. He looked nervous and hopeful, and so in love it took her breath away. The music started. Samuel squeezed her arm, and Lydia Moore began the walk that would change her life forever. Every step down that aisle felt like a declaration, a middle finger to everyone who said it couldn't work. A promise to herself that she was brave enough for this. A leap of faith that love really could overcome impossible odds. Cole watched her come, his eyes never leaving her face. And when she reached the front, when Samuel placed her hand in Cole's, the size difference was so stark it made people gasp. Her hand disappeared in his. She had to tilt her head all the way back to see his face. They looked impossible together. They looked perfect. The preacher began the ceremony, and Lydia barely heard the words. She was too focused on Cole, on the way his thumb stroked gently over her knuckles, on the tears shining in his eyes, on the promise in his expression that said louder than words, "I will never hurt you. I will always protect you. I will love you until my last breath. Do you, Cole Tanner, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." His voice was steady, sure. "And do you, Lydia Moore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Lydia looked up at the man who'd paid her uncle's debts, who'd courted her properly, who'd read medical books from Chicago just to keep her safe. The man everyone said would kill her, but who'd spent 3 months proving he was capable of infinite gentleness. "I do," she said clearly. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Cole bent down, and Lydia stood on her toes, and they met in the middle. The kiss was soft, sweet, full of promise. And when they turned to face the congregation, hand in hand, the look on their faces dared anyone to say it wouldn't last. The reception was held at Cole's ranch, their ranch now, and it was more celebration than anyone expected. The food was good, the music lively, and if some people still whispered about the size difference, most were too busy eating and dancing to care. Lydia danced with her uncle first, then with Cole's ranch hands who'd come around to accepting her, and finally with Cole himself. He had to lift her off the ground to make it work, holding her suspended in his arms while they swayed to the music, but Lydia didn't mind. She felt safe there, protected, loved. Happy? Cole murmured against her hair. Terrified, but happy. Good, because you're stuck with me now. Promise? Promise. As the sun set over the Montana hills, as their guests finally started to leave, as they stood together on the porch of the house that was now theirs, Lydia Moore Tanner realized something important. This was just the beginning, the easy part. The real test would come tonight, and in all the nights after. The real test would be learning to live together, to love together, to overcome every obstacle that their size difference would throw at them. But standing there with Cole's arm around her shoulders, with the weight of her wedding ring on her finger, with her whole future spread out before her like the endless Montana sky, Lydia wasn't afraid anymore. She was ready. The last guest finally left around 9 o'clock, and suddenly the house felt very quiet, very empty, very full of possibility and terror in equal measure. Lydia stood in the parlor, still in her wedding dress, listening to Cole moving around upstairs. He was giving her space, she realized. Time to adjust. Time to decide if she wanted to go through with this or if she needed that smaller mattress he'd so carefully placed beside the bed. "You can come up whenever you're ready," he called down, his voice careful. "No rush. I'll be here." Lydia looked at Goliath, the orange kitten who'd made himself at home on the sofa. "What do you think?" she whispered. "Am I brave or just stupid?" The kitten yawned, showing tiny needle teeth, completely unconcerned with his mistress's crisis. "Not helpful," Lydia muttered, but she smiled anyway. Then she took a deep breath, gathered her skirts, and climbed the stairs. Cole was sitting on the edge of the massive bed, still fully dressed except for his boots. He looked up when she entered, and the vulnerability in his expression nearly broke her heart. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi yourself." They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Cole said, "I've been thinking. Maybe we should wait. Take our time. There's no rush to—" He gestured vaguely at the bed. "You know." "Consummate our marriage?" His ears turned red. "Yeah, that." Lydia walked closer, had to climb up on the step stool Cole had built just to sit beside him on the bed. Even sitting, he was taller. "Cole, I didn't marry you to wait. I married you to build a life together. All parts of it." "But you're scared. I can see it." "Of course I'm scared. You're huge and I'm tiny and everyone keeps telling me this is going to kill me." She took his hand. "But I'm also curious and determined and tired of letting fear make my decisions." "Lydia, those medical books you ordered from Chicago, did they help?" He looked embarrassed again. "They were educational. So you know what to do? How to be careful?" "I have ideas, theories." Cole ran his free hand through his hair, making it stick up. "But theories and reality are different things. What if I hurt you anyway? What if all the reading in the world doesn't matter because I'm just too—" Lydia kissed him. It was the only way to stop the spiral of worry, the endless what-ifs that could paralyze them both. She kissed him like she had behind the church, like she had at the altar, like she'd been wanting to all day but couldn't with 100 people watching. Cole responded carefully at first, then with growing confidence. His hands found her waist, spanning it completely, and Lydia felt that now familiar thrill of being small in his grasp. Not helpless, not fragile, just held. "Bed?" she murmured against his mouth. "Are you sure?" "Cole Tanner, if you ask me if I'm sure one more time, I'm going to start doubting your enthusiasm for this marriage." That surprised a laugh out of him. "My enthusiasm isn't in question. My control is." "Then let's test it." What followed was nothing like the crude jokes that the saloon had suggested, nothing like the horror stories people whispered. It was slow and careful and occasionally awkward because bodies don't come with instruction manuals and size differences require problem solving. Cole was patient to the point of sainthood, constantly checking in, constantly adjusting, using all that careful strength to support her without overwhelming her. And Lydia discovered that being small didn't mean being weak. That trust was its own kind of power. that choosing vulnerability with someone you loved was the bravest thing she'd ever done. Later, much later, they lay tangled together in the huge bed, Lydia's head on Cole's chest, his arm carefully draped over her waist. "You okay?" he asked, his voice rumbling under her ear. "Better than okay." And she meant it. She was sore and exhausted and definitely going to feel this tomorrow, but she was also happier than she'd been in years. "See? I didn't break. Not for lack of worrying on my part." Cole's hand traced gentle patterns on her back. "I kept thinking I was going to crush you. But you didn't, because you're not the monster everyone thinks you are." Lydia tilted her head to look at him. "You're just a man who happens to be very large, and I'm just a woman who happens to be very small. And together, we make it work." "Together," Cole echoed, and something in his voice suggested he was finally starting to believe it. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, proving with every breath that love could indeed find a way. The next morning brought a new reality. Lydia woke to find herself alone in the bed, heard sounds from downstairs, and realized Cole had gotten up early to make breakfast. She dressed slowly, everything ached in ways she'd expected and some she hadn't, and made her way down to find her husband attempting to cook eggs without burning them. "Morning," she said, and Cole spun around so fast he nearly knocked over the skillet. "You're supposed to be resting. I was going to bring you breakfast in bed." "I'm fine. A little sore, but fine." Lydia took the spatula from his hands. "And I can see you're about to ruin those eggs. Go sit down. Let me do this." They fell into an easy rhythm, Lydia cooking while Cole set the table with those careful movements that were becoming familiar. They ate together as husband and wife for the first time, discussing ranch business and the coming winter, and it all felt surprisingly normal, natural even, until Pete and Tom showed up for work. The two ranch hands took one look at Lydia moving gingerly around the kitchen and exchanged glances that said everything. Cole saw it too, and his jaw tightened. "Something you want to say, Pete?" "No, boss, just glad to see Mrs. Tanner's up and about." The emphasis on up and about made Lydia's cheeks burn. She knew what they were thinking, what everyone would think, that she'd barely survived her wedding night, that Cole had been too rough, that the dire predictions were already coming true. "I'm fine," she said firmly. "Just getting used to ranch life, that's all." Pete had the grace to look embarrassed, but the damage was done. Word would spread. Within a week, all of Silver Creek would know that tiny Lydia Tanner was moving slow, and they'd all assume the worst. After the ranch hands left, Cole pulled Lydia aside. "I'm sorry, I should have been more careful. Should have thought about how it would look. Stop apologizing." Lydia was getting tired of that phrase. "Cole, we're married. People are going to talk no matter what we do. We might as well give them something real to talk about instead of their made-up fears." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we show them I'm not some fragile flower that wilts at the first touch. I mean, I start working this ranch like the partner I am. I mean, we stop hiding and start living." Cole looked uncertain. "Lydia, you don't have to prove anything." "Yes, I do. We both do." She took his hands. "Everyone expects me to fail, to break, to run away like Martha did. And I'm not going to do that. But I can't just sit in this house being the delicate wife everyone expects. I need to be more." "You already are more." "Then let me show it." So Lydia threw herself into ranch life with a determination that surprised everyone, including herself. She learned to manage the household accounts, discovered she had a head for numbers that Cole lacked. She took over the kitchen garden, expanding it until they were growing enough vegetables to sell in town. She even started working with the cattle, though Cole drew the line at her handling the bulls. "I'm not risking you getting trampled," he said firmly. "But it's fine for the ranch hands? They're not my wife, and they're not 95 pounds. Cole's tone left no room for argument. "Compromise, Lydia. You can work the ranch, but not the dangerous parts. Deal?" "Deal," she agreed, because she could see the fear underneath his stubbornness, could see that every time she took a risk, he imagined losing her. The weeks passed, and slowly, grudgingly, Silver Creek started to accept that maybe the Tanner marriage wasn't the disaster they'd predicted. Lydia appeared in town regularly, healthy and whole, often with Cole at her side. They attended church together, shopped together, even hosted a dinner party that went surprisingly well despite Mrs. Peterson's visible disappointment that Lydia wasn't covered in bruises. But acceptance wasn't universal. There were still whispers, still people who looked at Lydia with pity, at Cole with suspicion. And then the Coulter brothers came to town. The Coulters were trouble. 3 brothers, Jack, Frank, and Billy, who'd been causing problems across Montana territory for years, rustling cattle, robbing stages, generally making themselves a nuisance without quite crossing the line into hanging offenses. They rode into Silver Creek in early November, looking for easy pickings and finding a town that was tired of their nonsense. Sheriff Morrison ran them out within a day, but not before they'd gotten a good look around. Not before Jack Coulter had seen Lydia in the general store and gotten ideas. "That's Bull Tanner's new wife," he'd said, loud enough for the whole store to hear. "Hell, she's barely bigger than my gun. No wonder Tanner keeps her locked up on that ranch." "I'm not locked up," Lydia had responded coolly. "And my husband's name is Cole, not Bull." Jack had laughed, a mean sound that made the hairs on Lydia's neck stand up. "Got some spine, don't you, little girl? Bet Tanner likes that. Probably the only thing that makes up for the rest of you being so insufficient." Lydia had left the store with her head high and her hands shaking. She didn't tell Cole about the encounter, didn't want to see the guilt and worry that would cross his face, didn't want him blaming himself for other men's crudeness. But she should have told him, because 2 weeks later, the Coulters came back. Cole had ridden into town for supplies, leaving Lydia home with Pete and Tom working the far pasture. She was in the kitchen baking bread when she heard horses. Multiple horses, riding fast. The Coulter brothers dismounted in her yard like they owned the place. Lydia watched through the window as Jack approached the house, his brothers flanking him. She had maybe 30 seconds to decide what to do. Run? Hide? She thought of her mother who'd faced down a mountain lion once to protect baby Lydia. Thought of all the times she'd proven she was stronger than she looked. She grabbed the shotgun Cole kept by the back door, checked that it was loaded, and walked out onto the porch. "To stop us, little girl?" "If I have to." Lydia raised the shotgun, aimed it at Jack's chest. The weapon was almost as big as she was, but she'd been shooting since she was 8. She knew how to handle it. "Last chance. Leave." "That's cute." Jack started walking toward the porch. "You really think you can—" Lydia fired. The shot went wide, intentionally, but close enough that Jack felt the air displacement. He stopped dead, hands raised, genuine surprise on his face. "Next one goes through your chest," Lydia said, pumping another round into the chamber. "I don't miss twice." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Frank Coulter, the middle brother, started laughing. "Jack, you just got backed down by a girl half your size." "Shut up, Frank." Jack's face was red, his pride clearly wounded. "She got lucky." "Didn't look like luck to me." Billy, the youngest, was already backing toward his horse. "Come on, Jack. Sheriff Morrison said we'd hang if we caused more trouble. Let's just go." But Jack wasn't ready to go. His hand drifted toward the gun at his hip, and Lydia saw the moment he decided pride was worth more than common sense. "Don't," she warned. He drew anyway. Lydia fired, and this time she didn't miss. The bullet took Jack in the shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him to the ground. His gun fell from nerveless fingers, and suddenly Frank and Billy had their hands up, shouting that they surrendered. "Get your brother and get off my land," Lydia said, her voice remarkably calm considering her heart was trying to punch through her ribs. "Tell Sheriff Morrison what happened. Tell him Jack Coulter drew on me first. And tell everyone in Silver Creek that Bull Tanner's wife isn't as helpless as she looks." Frank and Billy loaded their wounded brother onto his horse and rode off fast enough to raise dust. Lydia waited until they were gone, then carefully set down the shotgun and discovered her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold on. That's when Pete and Tom came running, drawn by the gunshots. They found Lydia sitting on the porch steps, pale but steady, explaining what had happened. "Jesus Christ," Tom breathed. "You shot Jack Coulter?" "He drew on me first," Lydia said. "Self-defense." "The boss is going to lose his mind," Pete said, but there was something like respect in his voice now. "You really stood them down? All 3 of them?" "I really did." By the time Cole came home an hour later, the story had already started spreading. The sheriff had been by to take Lydia's statement, had confirmed that Jack Coulter admitted she'd acted in self-defense. The doctor had patched up Jack's shoulder and declared him lucky the bullet had gone clean through. And the Coulter brothers were on their way out of Montana territory, their tails firmly between their legs. Cole took one look at Lydia and went white. What happened? Are you hurt? Did they touch you? I swear to God if they... I'm fine. Lydia stood up from where she'd been sitting on the porch, walked over to her husband, and took his shaking hands. Cole, I'm fine. They came here looking for trouble and I sent them away. End of story. You shot a man. I shot a man who drew on me first. There's a difference. Cole pulled her into his arms, held her so tight Lydia could barely breathe. She could feel his heart hammering, could feel the tremors running through his massive frame. When Pete told me, when he said the Coulters had been here, I thought I'd lost you. I thought, but you didn't. Lydia pulled back enough to see his face. Cole, I told you I wasn't fragile. I told you I could handle myself. Did you not believe me? I believed you. He sat down hard on the porch steps, pulled Lydia down beside him. I've spent my whole life being the strong one, the protector, the one who solves problems with size and strength. And my wife just faced down 3 outlaws with a shotgun while I was buying flour in town. Does that bother you? It should. I should be angry or embarrassed or something. Cole looked at her, and there were tears in his eyes. But all I feel is grateful and so damn proud I could burst. Lydia, you're the bravest person I know. I learned from the best. She leaned against him, let him wrap his arm around her. You've been protecting me since the day we met, teaching me how to be strong without losing my gentleness. Now I'm just returning the favor. They sat together as the sun set, processing what had happened. And Lydia realized something important. She'd spent so much energy proving she wasn't fragile that she'd forgotten to appreciate what she actually was. Strong, capable, worthy of being Cole's partner in every way that mattered. The story of Lydia shooting Jack Coulter spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. Within days, everyone knew. The tiny bride who was supposed to break had stood down 3 outlaws and lived to tell about it. The woman everyone pitied had proven she could protect herself and her home without her giant husband's help. The narrative started to shift. People still talked about the Tanners, but now the talk was different, impressed instead of pitying, curious instead of horrified. Mrs. Peterson actually stopped Lydia in the street to say, I suppose I underestimated you, dear. You're made of sterner stuff than you appear. Most people are, Lydia replied, and kept walking. But the real change came at home. Cole started trusting her more, stopped hovering quite so much. He still worried, probably always would, but he also stepped back and let Lydia be the capable woman she'd always been. They found their rhythm as partners, as equals, despite the physical differences that had once seemed insurmountable. And when December came and the first real snow fell, covering the Montana landscape in white, Lydia stood on their porch watching it with Cole at her side and thought about how far they'd come. 3 months ago, she'd been a girl saving her uncle's ranch by marrying a man everyone called a monster. Now she was a woman who'd found her strength, her purpose, and a love deeper than she'd imagined possible. What are you thinking about? Cole asked, his arm around her shoulders. How everyone was wrong, Lydia said. About us. About what we could be together. Not everyone. You were right all along. I was terrified all along. There's a difference. Cole laughed, that deep rumble that Lydia had come to love. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. Is that from one of your medical books? It's from you. You said it to me the night before our wedding. Lydia didn't remember saying it, but it sounded like something she would say. Well, I'm very wise. The wisest. Cole kissed the top of her head. And the bravest. And definitely the most stubborn woman in Montana territory. Someone has to keep you honest. They stood there in the cold, watching snow fall on their land, on their future. And Lydia thought about how strange life was. How you could start with a poker game and end with a marriage. How you could be terrified and brave at the same time. How love could bloom in the most unlikely places between the most unlikely people. Inside the house, Goliath meowed, demanding attention. The cattle in the barn needed feeding. Ranch work didn't stop for snow or sentiment. But for this moment, Cole and Lydia just stood together, 2 people who'd proven that size didn't matter, that courage came in all shapes, that love really could conquer fear. The next challenge came in January, when the Coulters gang, apparently Jack had friends, decided to cause trouble for the whole territory. They'd been robbing homesteads and ranches, getting bolder with each successful heist. Sheriff Morrison put out a call for volunteers to form a posse, and Cole signed up immediately. "You're going after outlaws?" Lydia asked, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. "Someone has to. Morrison needs able-bodied men, and I'm probably the ablest body he's got." Cole was checking his rifle, loading supplies. "We'll be gone maybe a week. Pete and Tom will stay here with you." "No." Cole looked up. "No? No, they won't stay here with me. They'll go with you." Lydia crossed her arms. "You're going after a gang. You need every man you can get. I can handle the ranch for a week." "Lydia, don't Lydia me. We just established that I can shoot better than half the men in this town. I'll be fine. But you need backup out there, and Pete and Tom are good men in a fight." Cole looked torn. "What if the gang comes here while we're gone?" "Then I'll handle it like I handled Jack Coulter." Lydia walked over, took his hands. "Cole, you can't protect me from everything, and you can't let worry about me stop you from doing what's right. Those outlaws are terrorizing families. They need to be stopped. Go stop them. You're going to give me gray hair before I'm 40. You'll look distinguished." In the end, Cole agreed, though Lydia could see it killed him to leave her. He made her promise to keep the shotgun loaded, to sleep with the doors locked, to ride into town if anything felt wrong. She promised all of it, kissed him goodbye, and watched the posse ride out with her heart in her throat. The week that followed was the longest of Lydia's life. She threw herself into ranch work, feeding cattle, mending fences, keeping so busy she couldn't worry. But at night, alone in the big house with only Goliath for company, she lay awake imagining all the ways Cole could get hurt, all the ways his size made him a target, all the ways she could lose him just when she'd found him. On the 5th day, a rider came to the ranch. Not Cole, but Tom, riding hard and covered in dust. "We got him," he said, sliding off his horse. "The gang's captured, but Mrs. Tanner, the boss is hurt." Lydia's world tilted. "How bad?" "Took a bullet in the leg. Doc says it'll heal, but he's asking for you. Won't stop asking, actually. Drove the doc half crazy, demanding we send someone to fetch you." Lydia was moving before Tom finished talking. "Saddle me a horse, the fast one. I'll grab supplies." She made it to town in record time, Tom struggling to keep up. Found Cole in the doctor's office, laid up in a bed that was too small for him, his leg wrapped in bandages and his face pale with pain. "You came," he said when she burst through the door. "Of course I came. You got shot, you idiot." Lydia was at his side in seconds, checking his bandages, his color, his breathing. "What happened?" "Shootout. We cornered the gang in a canyon. Billy Coulter got off a lucky shot before we took him down." Cole tried to sit up, winced. "It's not bad. Clean through and through. Doc says I'll be fine." "Doc says you'll be fine if you stay off that leg for 3 weeks," the doctor interjected from across the room. "Which means no ranch work, no riding, no anything except resting. Think you can manage that, Tanner?" "I have a ranch to run." "You have a wife to help you run it," Lydia cut in. She turned to the doctor. "When can I take him home?" "Tomorrow, if he makes it through the night without fever. But Mrs. Tanner, he's going to be difficult, stubborn, won't want to rest." Lydia looked at her husband, saw the mulish set to his jaw, and smiled sweetly. "Then I'll just have to make him." The next 3 weeks tested their marriage in new ways. Cole hated being helpless, hated needing Lydia's help for everything. She had to help him up the stairs, had to bring him meals, had to keep him from sneaking out to work the ranch when he thought she wasn't looking. "I caught you," she said one afternoon, finding him trying to hobble down to the barn on his crutches. "What part of stay off that leg is confusing you?" The cattle are fine. Pete and Tom are handling it. And I'm handling the books and the household. Everything's under control." Lydia blocked his path. "Cole Tanner, you've spent 4 months taking care of me, protecting me, worrying about me. Now it's my turn. So get back in that bed before I shoot your other leg and give you matching scars." Cole stared at her. "You wouldn't." "Try me." He didn't. Something in her expression convinced him she absolutely would, and he allowed her to help him back upstairs. Once there, propped up on pillows with his leg elevated, he looked at her with a mixture of frustration and wonder. "How do you do it?" he asked. "Do what?" "Be so small and so terrifying at the same time." Lydia laughed. "I learned from my husband. He's very large and very gentle, which is basically the same thing in reverse. I'm not gentle right now. I'm angry and useless, and you're healing." Lydia sat on the edge of the bed, took his hand. "Cole, you got shot protecting this territory. You helped capture a gang that was terrorizing families. You're a hero. The least you can do is let yourself heal properly." "I don't feel like a hero. I feel like a burden." "Well, you're my burden now, for better or worse, remember? This is the worst part. We're handling it." She squeezed his hand. "Besides, you've carried me more times than I can count. Literally carried me. The least I can do is carry the ranch for a few weeks while you rest." Cole pulled her closer, careful of his leg, and kissed her. "I love you. Have I mentioned that lately?" "Not since this morning." "I love you. You're the strongest person I know. And I'm the luckiest man alive." "Even with a bullet hole in your leg?" "Especially with a bullet hole in my leg, because it means I have you taking care of me." By the time Cole was back on his feet, it was late February. The gang was in jail awaiting trial. The territory was peaceful, and the Tanner Ranch had survived 3 weeks without its patriarch, proving that Lydia was more than capable of running things herself. The town's opinion had shifted completely. Nobody called her fragile anymore. Nobody predicted doom. Instead, people spoke of the Tanners with respect. That unusual couple who'd proven that love and determination could overcome any obstacle. That tiny woman and giant man who'd found a way to make it work. But the biggest test was yet to come. In early March, Lydia woke up feeling sick. It started as nausea, then progressed to exhaustion so profound she could barely get out of bed. Cole was immediately worried, wanted to call the doctor, but Lydia had a suspicion about what was wrong. She waited until she was sure, until she'd missed 2 cycles and the sickness was a daily occurrence. Then she told Cole. They were in the kitchen, Cole making breakfast while Lydia sipped water and tried not to vomit. She watched him move around their kitchen, this gentle giant who'd become her whole world, and gathered her courage. "Cole, I need to tell you something." He turned, immediately alert. "What's wrong? Are you sick? Should I get the doctor?" "I'm not sick, at least not the way you think." Lydia took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." Cole dropped the spatula. It clattered on the floor, but neither of them moved to pick it up. He just stared at her, his face cycling through shock, joy, and terror so fast Lydia couldn't track them all. He couldn't seem to finish the sentence. "About 2 months along, I think. Maybe 3. I wasn't sure at first, but now..." She gestured at herself. The sickness, the exhaustion, the other signs. It all fits. Cole crossed the kitchen in 2 strides, dropped to his knees in front of her chair, took her hands. "Are you happy? Scared? Both?" "Both," Lydia admitted. "Definitely both. This is what we wanted, but it's also dangerous," Cole finished. His face had gone pale. "Lydia, we need to get you to a doctor. Need to make sure everything's okay. Need to..." "Breathe," Lydia interrupted. "Cole, breathe. We have 7 months to prepare. 7 months to figure this out. Don't panic yet." "Don't panic?" "Lydia, you're carrying my child. My very large child, probably, and you're small. I know. Believe me, I know." Lydia cupped his face, made him look at her. "But I'm also strong, and we're going to be careful, and we're going to have the best doctor in Montana Territory on call, and we're going to do everything right, together." "Together," Cole echoed, but he still looked terrified. And Lydia understood. This was the thing everyone had warned them about, the thing Martha had mentioned, the thing that could prove all the naysayers right. Pregnancy was dangerous for any woman, but for someone her size carrying a child from someone Cole's size? The risks were very real. But Lydia had never let risk stop her before. She wasn't about to start now. She was going to have Cole's baby, and she was going to survive it. And they were going to prove one more time that size didn't determine strength, that love could overcome biology, that the impossible was just another word for a challenge she hadn't conquered yet. We can do this, she told Cole firmly. You and me. We can do this. Cole looked at her, this tiny, fierce woman who'd turned his world upside down, and nodded. We can do this. And in that moment, sitting in their kitchen with morning sunlight streaming through the windows, Lydia and Cole Tanner began preparing for the biggest challenge of their lives. The challenge that would test everything they'd built together. The challenge that would show the world, once and for all, exactly what they were made of. The doctor's face told them everything before he even opened his mouth. Dr. Harrison was Silver Creek's most experienced physician, had delivered more babies than anyone in Montana Territory, and right now he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He'd just finished examining Lydia, had measured and prodded and asked uncomfortable questions, and now he sat across from the Tanners in their parlor with the expression of a man about to deliver bad news. Mrs. Tanner, you're about 10 weeks along. The baby appears healthy, your heartbeat is strong, and so far everything is developing normally. He paused, and Lydia felt Cole's hand tighten on hers. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned. Concerned how? Cole's voice was tight. Your wife is exceptionally small. Her pelvis is narrow, her frame delicate. Under normal circumstances, that would make any pregnancy risky. But given your size, Mr. Tanner, and the likelihood that this child will be significantly larger than average, Dr. Harrison trailed off, seemed to be choosing his words carefully. I've seen situations like this before. Not often, but enough. The outcomes aren't always favorable. What are you saying? Lydia asked, though she already knew. I'm saying this pregnancy could kill you. I'm saying that even if you survive carrying the baby to term, the birth itself will be extraordinarily dangerous. I'm saying that if complications arise, I may have to make choices that... He stopped, looked between them. Choices about who to save. The room went very quiet. Outside, Lydia could hear Pete calling to the cattle, the normal sounds of ranch life continuing as if her whole world wasn't crashing down around her. There are options, Dr. Harrison continued gently, ways to end the pregnancy early while it's still safe. I know a doctor in Denver who... No. Lydia's voice was firm. Absolutely not. Mrs. Tanner, please understand. I understand perfectly. You're telling me this pregnancy is dangerous, that I might die, that my baby might die. I understand all of that. Lydia met the doctor's eyes steadily. And I'm telling you that I'm keeping this child. I'm not ending this pregnancy. I'm not giving up before we even try. Dr. Harrison looked at Cole. Mr. Tanner, surely you can see reason. My wife has made her decision. Cole's voice was hollow, but there was steel underneath. I don't like it. I'm terrified by it. But it's her choice to make, not mine. You could lose her, the doctor said bluntly. Is that what you want? To be a widower before you're 40? Because that's a very real possibility here. Cole's face did something complicated. Pain and fear and love all mixed together. What I want is for my wife to be happy. And if carrying this baby makes her happy, then I'll support that choice, even if it kills me to do it. Doctor, Harrison shook his head, clearly frustrated but recognizing a lost cause. Fine. Then we do this the hard way. Mrs. Tanner, you'll need to see me weekly. We'll monitor the baby's growth, your health, everything. At the first sign of trouble, and I mean the very first sign, you come to me immediately. Understood? Understood, Lydia agreed. And no heavy lifting, no riding, no stress. You need to be careful every single day of this pregnancy. She will be, Cole said. I'll make sure of it. After the doctor left, they sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Cole said, You could die. I know. I could lose you. I know that too. Lydia turned to face him, took both his hands. But Cole, this is our baby, our child, the family we wanted. I'm not going to give that up because of fear. Fear is keeping you alive right now, Cole said roughly. Fear is what makes people careful, what makes them think before they act. You're talking about risking your life. I'm talking about living my life. Lydia squeezed his hands. Cole, I could die tomorrow, could get trampled by a horse or catch influenza or any of 100 other things. Life is risk, and this risk, this baby, it's worth it to me. What if it's not worth it to me? Cole's voice cracked. What if I'd rather have you alive without children than lose you trying to give me one? Then you married the wrong woman. Lydia said it gently, but firmly. Because I'm not giving up. I'm not backing down. I'm having this baby, Cole. Our baby. And I'm going to survive it. You can't promise that. No. But I can promise to fight, to be careful, to do everything the doctor says, and to trust that we're strong enough to get through this together. She placed his hand on her still flat stomach. This is our child. Can you feel it? Can you feel the possibility? Cole's hand trembled against her belly. I feel terror. Feel love too. Feel hope.
Feel all of it, because that's what we're doing here. We're choosing hope over fear. We're choosing to believe that maybe, just maybe, we can have this, that we can be parents, that our story doesn't end in tragedy. Cole pulled her into his arms, held her so carefully she might have been made of glass. But Lydia knew better. She wasn't glass. She was steel wrapped in skin, determination made flesh, and she was going to prove it. The months that followed were the hardest of Lydia's life. The morning sickness lasted well into her 4th month, leaving her weak and miserable. Cole hovered constantly, driving her half crazy with his concern. He wouldn't let her lift anything heavier than a teacup. Insisted she rest for hours every afternoon, brought her meals in bed when she was too tired to come downstairs. I'm pregnant, not dying, she snapped one afternoon when he'd carried her to the sofa for the 3rd time that day. You heard what the doctor said. The doctor said to be careful, not to become an invalid. Lydia pushed herself up, wincing at the effort. Cole, I love you, but if you don't let me do something, I'm going to lose my mind. Like what? What do you want to do? The books. Let me handle the ranch accounts. That's sitting work, safe work. And it'll give me something to focus on besides feeling like my body's betraying me. Cole hesitated, then nodded. The books. But that's it. No cooking, no cleaning, no... I'll negotiate cooking when I can keep food down again. Deal? Deal. So Lydia took over the ranch finances and discovered she had a real talent for it. She found inefficiencies Cole had overlooked, negotiated better prices with suppliers, even found a buyer for their surplus cattle at twice what they'd been getting. By her 5th month, the Tanner Ranch was more profitable than it had been in years, and Lydia had something to be proud of beyond just surviving pregnancy. But her body was changing in ways that scared her. The baby was growing fast. Too fast, the doctor said with concern. By 6 months, Lydia looked like she might pop. Her belly was enormous on her small frame, throwing off her balance, making even simple movements exhausting. Her back ached constantly. Her feet swelled. She couldn't sleep lying down anymore, had to prop herself up with pillows just to breathe. And Cole watched it all with the expression of a man watching his worst nightmare unfold in slow motion. Talk to me, Lydia said one night when she caught him staring at her belly like it was a time bomb. About what? About what you're thinking, what you're feeling. You've barely said 10 words to me all day. Cole was quiet for so long Lydia thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, I'm thinking that every day you get bigger, you get weaker. I'm thinking that the baby is growing too fast and you're getting too tired, and Dr. Harrison looks more worried every time he examines you. I'm thinking that I did this to you, that my selfishness, wanting a family, wanting children, is killing you by inches. Cole, and I'm thinking, he continued, his voice breaking, that I don't know how to live without you. That if something happens during the birth, if I have to choose between you and the baby, I'm choosing you, every time, without hesitation. And I know that makes me a terrible father, but I can't lose you, Lydia. I can't. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. She struggled to sit up, and Cole was there immediately, helping her, always helping. Once she was upright, she took his face in her hands. You're not a terrible father. You're a scared husband. There's a difference. She kissed him softly. And Cole, if it comes to that choice, if something goes wrong, you save the baby. No. Yes, because I'm choosing that now, while I can. I'm telling you, if there's a choice, you save our child. You give them the life we planned. You raise them to be brave and kind and strong. You teach them about their mother who loved them enough to... Stop. Cole's voice was harsh. Don't talk like that.
Don't say goodbye to me when you're still here. I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying just in case. I'm saying I need you to know what I want. What you want is impossible. You want me to let you die. I want you to save our child if it comes to that. Lydia was crying now, couldn't help it. Promise me, Cole. Promise me you'll choose the baby. I can't. Promise me. They stared at each other, both crying, both terrified, both unwilling to bend. Finally, Cole said, I promise I'll think about what you want. That's the best I can do. It wasn't enough, but Lydia knew it was all she'd get. She let him hold her, let him whisper apologies into her hair, let him try to memorize the feel of her in his arms like he was preparing for loss. The 7th month brought new complications. Lydia's blood pressure spiked. Her hands and feet swelled so badly she couldn't wear her wedding ring. Dr. Harrison put her on strict bed rest, and this time Lydia didn't argue. She could feel something was wrong, could feel her body struggling under the weight of the baby she carried. It's too big, the doctor told Cole privately, though Lydia heard through the door. The baby's measuring almost 3 months ahead. At this rate, it'll be 9, maybe 10 pounds at birth. For a woman Mrs. Tanner's size, that's what? Cole demanded. That's likely fatal. Mr. Tanner, I need you to prepare yourself. The odds of your wife surviving this birth are not good. And if she does survive, there will almost certainly be damage. She may never be able to have another child, may never fully recover. Then we do whatever it takes to save her. Cut the baby out if you have to. I don't care. That's not really a viable option out here. We don't have the equipment, the sterilization techniques. A cesarean section would be even more dangerous than natural birth. The doctor paused. I'm sorry, Mr. Tanner. I wish I had better news. That night, Cole didn't come to bed. Lydia found him in the barn, sitting in the hay, his head in his hands. She lowered herself down beside him with difficulty, her enormous belly making everything awkward. You're supposed to be resting, Cole said without looking up. I'm supposed to be with my husband when he needs me. What I need is for you to be safe. What I need is to turn back time and never make that offer in the saloon, never marry you, never put you in this position. Cole Tanner, you look at me right now. Lydia waited until he did. Do you regret our marriage? Of course not, but do you regret loving me? Never. Lydia, then don't you dare regret our child. Don't you dare wish we'd never tried for this. She took his hand, placed it on her belly. Feel that? That's your baby. Our baby. Moving and growing and alive. This child is worth every risk, every complication, every moment of fear. Because this is what we created together. This is love made real. Cole's hand spread across her stomach, and right on cue the baby kicked, hard. Lydia saw the wonder cross Cole's face, saw the moment his fear transformed into something else. Not quite hope, but close. That's strong, he said softly. Takes after their father. God, I hope not. If this baby's as big as me, then we'll handle it. Together. Like we handle everything. Lydia leaned against him, or tried to. Her belly made it difficult. Cole, I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But we can't live in fear. We have to trust. Have to believe that somehow, some way, we're going to be okay. And if we're not, then we love each other until the end, and that's enough. That has to be enough. They sat in the barn until the stars came out, until the cold drove them inside, until Lydia was so exhausted Cole had to carry her upstairs. And as he tucked her into bed, as he kissed her forehead and whispered that he loved her, Lydia thought that maybe this was what marriage really was. Not the easy moments, but the hard ones. Not the joy, but the fear faced together. Not the certainty, but the choice to try anyway. The 8th month was agony. Lydia could barely move, could barely breathe. The baby had dropped lower, preparing for birth, and the pressure on her small frame was excruciating. Dr. Harrison visited daily now, monitoring her closely, his expression growing more grave with each visit. Any day now, he told Cole. Could be tonight, could be next week, but soon. And when it happens, it's going to happen fast. You need to be prepared. How do I prepare to lose my wife? You prepare to be strong for her, to support her through this. And if the worst happens, the doctor trailed off. You prepare to be a father. Cole sent word to Samuel, who arrived within hours and set up camp in the guest room. He took one look at his niece, so small, so swollen, so exhausted, and had to leave the room to compose himself. She's going to die, isn't she? He asked Cole later. Not if I have anything to say about it. You're not God, Cole. You can't control this. Then I'll pray. Cole's jaw was set. I'll pray, and I'll hope, and I'll do whatever it takes, because I'm not losing her. I refuse to lose her. But refusing wasn't enough. On a cold October night, almost exactly 1 year after their wedding, Lydia's water broke. She was in the kitchen when it happened, trying to make tea, even though Cole had told her to stay in bed. Suddenly, there was water everywhere, and pain. Oh God, the pain. It ripped through her like lightning, stealing her breath, buckling her knees. Cole! She managed to scream before another contraction hit. He was there in seconds, caught her before she fell, lifted her like she weighed nothing. I've got you. I've got you. Samuel, get the doctor. Now! The next hours were a blur of agony. Lydia had thought she understood pain, but this was something beyond comprehension. Her body was trying to expel a baby that was too big through a pelvis that was too small, and everything inside her felt like it was tearing apart. Dr. Harrison arrived, took one look, and his face went white. This isn't good. The baby's too big. She's too small. Mr. Tanner, I need you to prepare yourself. Save her, Cole said, his voice like iron. Whatever it takes, you save my wife. I'll do everything I can, but you need to understand. Another scream from Lydia cut him off. The pain was constant now, wave after wave with no relief. She could feel something was wrong, could feel her body failing. Cole, she gasped between contractions. Cole, I can't. Yes, you can. He was beside her, holding her hand so tight it should have hurt, but didn't. Lydia, look at me. You're the strongest person I know. You faced down outlaws. You survived marrying me. You can do this. Too big, she panted. Baby's too big. I can't. You can. Cole was crying now, she realized, tears streaming down his face while he tried to smile for her. You're going to push, and you're going to fight, and you're going to meet our child. You hear me? You're going to live through this because I need you. Our baby needs you. You don't get to give up now. Another contraction. Lydia screamed, pushed, felt something tear inside her. Blood. There was so much blood. Dr. Harrison was shouting instructions, moving fast, his hands doing things Lydia couldn't see and didn't want to know about. The baby's crowning, he said. Mrs. Tanner, I need you to push. One more big push. I can't, Lydia sobbed. She was so tired, so broken. Everything hurt, and she just wanted it to stop. You can. Cole's voice in her ear, steady and sure. One more, love. One more push, and you're done. Give me one more. Lydia gathered every ounce of strength she had left, gathered all the courage that had brought her this far, all the stubbornness that had made her marry a giant, all the determination that had helped her survive the impossible. And she pushed. The pain was blinding, white-hot, and all-consuming. Lydia felt something give way, felt a rush of relief so profound it was almost euphoric, and then she heard it, a baby crying. It's a girl, Dr. Harrison said, and his voice was full of wonder. My God, it's a girl, big but healthy, perfect. Lydia tried to see, but her vision was blurring. There was still too much blood, too much pain. She could hear the doctor cursing, hear Cole shouting for him to fix it, hear Samuel praying in the corner. Stay with me, Cole begged, his face swimming above her. Lydia, please, stay with me. You did it. Our daughter's here. You just have to stay. But Lydia's eyes were closing. The world was fading. The last thing she heard was her daughter crying. The most beautiful sound she'd ever known. And then there was nothing but darkness. She woke up 3 days later. The first thing Lydia saw was Cole, slumped in a chair beside the bed, his head on the mattress next to her hand. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, like he hadn't slept since she'd gone into labor, which she realized he probably hadn't. Cole, she whispered, her voice barely there. His head snapped up.
For a moment, he just stared at her like he couldn't believe she was real. Then he was on his knees beside the bed, grabbing her hand, kissing it, crying. "You're awake. Thank God you're awake. We all thought." "The baby," Lydia managed. "Our daughter. She's perfect." Cole was laughing and crying at the same time. "She's in the next room with your uncle. 9 pounds, 2 ounces, dark hair like you, but she's big. So big. Dr. Harrison says he's never seen a baby that size from a mother your size. Says it's a miracle you both survived." "Can I see her?" "Of course. Of course." Cole practically ran from the room, returned moments later with a bundle wrapped in blankets. He placed the baby carefully in Lydia's arms, and she looked down at her daughter for the first time. The baby was beautiful. Tiny compared to Cole, but huge compared to Lydia. She had dark hair, a scrunched-up face, and when she opened her eyes, they were the same dark brown as her father's. "Hello," Lydia whispered. "Hello, little one. I'm your mama." The baby made a small sound, grabbed Lydia's finger with a surprisingly strong grip, and Lydia felt something shift inside her. A love so profound it made everything she'd been through worth it. Every moment of pain, every complication, every terrifying second. This was her daughter, the child she and Cole had made together. The impossible baby that shouldn't have survived, but did. "What should we name her?" Cole asked softly. Lydia didn't have to think about it. "Faith. Her name is Faith Tanner, because that's what got us here. Faith that we could make this work. Faith that love was enough. Faith that the impossible was just another challenge to overcome." "Faith," Cole repeated, testing the name. "It's perfect. She's perfect." He looked at Lydia, and she saw everything in his expression, the fear that had consumed him, the relief that she'd survived, the overwhelming love that made him who he was. "You're perfect. I nearly died. But you didn't. You lived. You both lived." Cole sat on the edge of the bed, carefully wrapped his arm around Lydia and their daughter. "Dr. Harrison said he's never seen anything like it. Said you shouldn't have survived the birth, shouldn't have survived the blood loss, shouldn't have survived the complications. But you did. Because you're you. Because you're the strongest person I've ever known." "I felt weak," Lydia admitted. "During the birth, I wanted to give up." "But you didn't. You never do." Cole kissed her forehead. "That's what I love about you. Everyone told us this was impossible, that we were too different, that you were too small, that this baby would kill you, and you proved them all wrong, again." Lydia looked down at Faith, at this perfect little person they'd created against all odds. "We proved them wrong," she corrected. "Together." The next weeks were a chaos of adjustment. Faith was a hungry baby, demanding and loud. Lydia's body was slow to heal. Dr. Harrison had been right about the damage. She'd torn badly during the birth, would need months of recovery. But she was alive. They were both alive. And that was more than anyone had expected. The town's reaction was mixed. Some people were genuinely happy for the Tanners, brought gifts and meals and offers of help. Others seemed almost disappointed that the disaster they'd predicted hadn't materialized. And a few, like Mrs. Peterson, couldn't help making snide comments. "Well, you survived one birth," she said when she came to visit. "But I hope you're not planning on more children. Lightning doesn't strike twice, dear." "Thank you for your concern," Lydia said sweetly, even though she wanted to throw something at the woman's head. "But my family planning is between me and my husband." After Mrs. Peterson left, Cole found Lydia crying in the nursery, holding Faith. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "She's right. The doctor said the same thing. No more children. My body can't handle it." Lydia wiped her eyes. "I know we're lucky to have Faith. I know I should be grateful. But I wanted more, Cole. I wanted to give you a big family. You gave me everything I need right here." Cole knelt beside the rocking chair, looked at his wife and daughter. "Lydia, you almost died bringing Faith into this world. You think I want to risk losing you for more children? You think I need anything beyond what I already have? But you said you wanted a family. I wanted you. I wanted this." He gestured at Faith, at Lydia, at the life they'd built. Everything else was just details. And if Faith is the only child we have, then she's enough. More than enough. She's a miracle. You're not disappointed? I'm grateful. I'm overwhelmed. I'm so in love with both of you, I can barely function. Cole smiled. You gave me a daughter, Lydia. A perfect, beautiful, impossible daughter. How could I be anything but the happiest man alive? Lydia leaned forward, kissed him softly. Faith stirred between them, made a small complaining sound, and they both laughed. She's got your stubbornness, Cole observed, and your size, poor thing. She'll need both. Growing up the daughter of Bull Tanner and his tiny wife, she's going to have to be strong. Then we'll teach her. Lydia looked down at her daughter, at this child who'd defied every odd. We'll teach her to be brave, to be kind, to never let anyone tell her what's impossible, to love without fear. To be like her mother, Cole said. To be like both of us. The best parts of both. They sat together in the nursery, their small family of 3, and Lydia thought about how far they'd come. From that night in the saloon to this moment. From strangers bound by debt to partners bound by love. From the couple everyone said would fail to the family that proved anything was possible. The road hadn't been easy. It had been terrifying and painful, and full of moments where Lydia thought she couldn't go on. But she had. They both had. And now they had faith, living proof that size didn't matter, that love conquered fear, that the impossible was just another word for a challenge they'd overcome together. I love you, Lydia said to Cole. I love you too. He kissed her temple. Both of you, my girls. Outside, the Montana sky was turning purple with twilight. Inside, the Tanner family sat together in the gathering dark, 3 hearts beating as one, proving with every breath that miracles happen to those brave enough to reach for them. Faith Tanner turned 6 months old on a spring morning that smelled like rain and new grass. Lydia stood at the kitchen window watching Cole in the yard, their daughter perched on his massive shoulders like she'd been born there. Faith was laughing, that deep belly laugh that babies make when the world is pure joy, as Cole pretended to be a horse, galloping in slow circles around the barn. 6 months. Half a year since Lydia had nearly died bringing this perfect child into the world. Half a year of learning how to be parents, how to function on no sleep, how to love something so much it physically hurt. Her body had healed slowly, the doctor's warnings about permanent damage proving accurate. But Lydia was alive. Faith was thriving, and watching her husband play with their daughter made every moment of pain worth it. You're going to spoil her, Lydia called out the window. Cole looked up, grinning. That's a father's job. Your job is running the ranch. The ranch can wait. My girls can't. He brought Faith closer to the window, and the baby reached chubby hands toward Lydia, babbling something that might have been mama or might have been nothing at all. Someone wants you. Lydia opened the door, and Cole handed Faith over carefully. The baby immediately grabbed a fistful of Lydia's hair and tried to eat it, which seemed to be her new favorite activity. She's going to be tall, Lydia observed. Faith was already bigger than most 1-year-olds, growing at a pace that reminded everyone exactly who her father was. Takes after me, Cole said proudly. But she's got your spirit. Yesterday, I found her trying to climb out of her crib, 6 months old and already attempting escape. Definitely my daughter, then. They went inside together, the morning routine as familiar now as breathing. Cole made breakfast while Lydia fed Faith. Pete and Tom arrived for work, tipping their hats to Mrs. Tanner with genuine respect now. The ranch was doing well, better than well. Lydia's management of the finances had turned them into one of the most profitable operations in the territory, and Cole's reputation had shifted from dangerous monster to devoted family man almost overnight. But peace never lasted long in Montana territory. The trouble started with a knock on the door in late May. Lydia answered it to find a stranger standing on her porch, a man in an expensive suit who looked wildly out of place on a working ranch. Mrs. Tanner? My name is Howard Blackwood. I'm an attorney from Chicago, and I'm here about a matter of inheritance. Lydia's first thought was that someone had died. Her Uncle Samuel was healthy, but he was getting older. Inheritance? May I come in? It's rather complicated. She shouldn't have let him in. Should have waited for Cole to return from checking the fence line. But curiosity got the better of her,
and within minutes, Blackwood was sitting in their parlor explaining a scheme so convoluted it took 3 tries before Lydia understood it. Apparently, Cole's father, who died when Cole was 15, had a brother back east. This brother had recently passed away, leaving behind a substantial estate and a will that named Cole as a beneficiary. But there was a catch. The inheritance was contingent on Cole returning to Chicago to claim it in person, and doing so within 6 months of being notified. And if he doesn't? Lydia asked. Then the estate goes to a distant cousin, a Mr. Vernon Tanner, who I'm told is not a pleasant man. Blackwood pulled papers from his briefcase. The estate is worth approximately $50,000. Real estate, investments, various assets. It would make your husband a very wealthy man. $50,000. Lydia's mind reeled. That was more money than most people saw in 10 lifetimes. More than enough to secure Faith's future, to expand the ranch, to never worry about money again. Why didn't anyone notify us sooner? She asked. Your husband's uncle was estranged from the family. Apparently there was bad blood after your father-in-law's death. The uncle only recently learned of Cole's whereabouts, and when he was dying, he decided to make amends through his will. Blackwood spread the papers on the table. But the clock is ticking, Mrs. Tanner. Cole has until November to appear in Chicago and claim his inheritance. If he misses that deadline, he forfeits everything. Cole came home an hour later to find Lydia pacing the parlor, Faith on her hip, the attorney's papers scattered across the table. What's wrong? He asked immediately. Lydia explained. Watched Cole's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been grief. He'd never talked much about his family, about the father who died young, and the relatives back east who'd wanted nothing to do with a son they thought was too big, too different, too much of everything. $50,000, Cole said finally. That's life-changing, Lydia finished. Cole, with that money, we could stay here and keep building the life we have. Cole picked up the papers, scanned them, then set them down like they burned his hands. I'm not going to Chicago, Lydia. What? Why not? Because I don't need money from people who couldn't be bothered with me when my father died. Because I built this life from nothing, and I don't need their charity now. His jaw was set in that stubborn way Lydia recognized. Besides, Chicago? That's weeks of travel. Weeks away from you and Faith. Weeks of leaving the ranch in someone else's hands. It's not worth it. $50,000 is absolutely worth it. Not to me. They argued about it for 3 days. Lydia pointed out everything the money could buy. Security, education for Faith, improvements to the ranch. Cole countered that they were doing fine without it, that pride was worth more than money, that some doors were meant to stay closed. Finally, Samuel intervened. He'd been visiting more frequently since Faith's birth, unable to stay away from his grandniece for long. He listened to both sides, then looked at Cole with the expression of a man about to deliver hard truth. You're being a fool, Samuel said bluntly. Cole bristled. Excuse me? You heard me. You're letting pride cost your daughter her future. That money could send Faith to the best schools, could give her opportunities neither you nor Lydia ever had. And you're throwing it away because your feelings are hurt? Samuel shook his head. I thought you were smarter than that. It's not about hurt feelings. It's exactly about hurt feelings. Your father's family abandoned you when you needed them. I understand that, but this is your uncle trying to make amends. And even if his motives are suspect, even if it's guilt money, it's still money. Money that could change Faith's life. Cole looked at Lydia, who was holding their sleeping daughter. What do you think? I think Uncle Samuel is right, Lydia said quietly. I think you should go to Chicago, claim what's yours, and then come home to us. Come with me then, both of you. Cole, Faith is 6 months old. She can't handle weeks of travel, and I'm still not fully healed from the birth. The journey would be too much. Lydia crossed to him, took his hand. But you can go. You should go. For Faith, for our future. I don't want to leave you. I know, but sometimes we do things we don't want to do because they're right. She smiled. Besides, I survived marrying you, survived pregnancy, survived childbirth. I can survive 6 weeks without you. Cole looked torn, but finally, reluctantly, he agreed. He'd leave in June, be back by August. Samuel would stay at the ranch to help Lydia. Pete and Tom would handle the heavy work. It would be fine. Everything would be fine. Except it wasn't. Cole left on a Tuesday morning, looking back so many times as he rode away that Lydia thought he might turn around. She stood on the porch with Faith, waving until he disappeared over the ridge. Then she went inside and tried not to think about how empty the house felt without him. The first week was manageable. Lydia threw herself into ranch work, into mothering Faith, into keeping so busy she didn't have time to miss Cole. He sent a telegram from Denver saying he'd made good time. Another from Kansas City. Another from St. Louis. Each message was brief but reassuring. He was fine. He missed them. He'd be home soon. The second week brought visitors. Lydia was in the kitchen when she heard horses. Multiple horses, moving fast. She looked out the window and felt ice slide down her spine. The Coulter gang, or what was left of it after Cole and the sheriff had rounded most of them up. But apparently some had escaped, and now they were here, in her yard, looking for revenge. She grabbed Faith, ran upstairs to the nursery, and hid her daughter in the wardrobe. "Stay quiet, baby," she whispered. "Please, please stay quiet." Then she grabbed the shotgun and went back downstairs. There were 4 of them this time, brothers and cousins of the Coulters she'd shot, come to settle accounts. They'd waited until Cole was gone, waited until they thought she'd be helpless. They'd miscalculated. "Mrs. Tanner?" the leader called out. He was young, maybe 20, with mean eyes and a gun already drawn. "We heard your husband's gone east. Figured it was time to have a conversation about what you did to Jack." "Jack drew on me first," Lydia called from behind the door. "Ask the sheriff. It was self-defense."
Don't care about self-defense. Care about family. You shot my brother, and now I'm going to make you pay. Lydia's mind raced. 4 against 1. She had the shotgun, but it only held 2 shells. Even if she dropped 2 of them, the other 2 would get her, and upstairs Faith was hidden, but not safe. If they got past Lydia, if they found the baby, no. That wasn't going to happen. She stepped onto the porch, shotgun raised. "You want revenge? Come and take it, but know that I'm not alone. Pete and Tom are in the barn. They've already sent someone for the sheriff. You've got maybe 10 minutes before you're surrounded." It was a lie. Pete and Tom were working the far pasture, wouldn't be back for hours. But the Coulter cousins didn't know that. "You're bluffing," the leader said, but he looked uncertain. "Am I? You want to bet your life on that?" Lydia pumped the shotgun, the sound sharp and clear in the morning air. "First 2 of you who try me are going down. Question is, who wants to be first?" For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of the men, older than the others, with more sense, said, "This ain't worth it, Jimmy. Let's go." "But she's got us cold. Can't you see? We rush her, we die. Maybe we get her in the end, but we still die. And for what? Jack was an idiot. We all know it. Got himself shot being stupid." The older man was already backing toward his horse. "Come on, we'll settle this another time." "There won't be another time," Lydia said, her voice steel. "You come back here, I'll kill you, all of you. And if I can't, my husband will. You know who he is? You know what Bull Tanner does to people who threaten his family?" That did it. The Coulter cousins knew Cole's reputation, knew that threatening his wife and child was signing their own death warrant. They mounted up and rode off, throwing threats over their shoulders but already beaten. Lydia waited until they were gone, then her legs gave out. She sat hard on the porch steps, the shotgun across her lap, shaking so badly her teeth chattered. Upstairs, Faith started crying. The wardrobe must have gotten stuffy, and Lydia forced herself to stand, to move, to go comfort her daughter. "It's okay," she whispered, pulling Faith into her arms. "Mama's here. You're safe. We're both safe." But they weren't. Not really. Not until those men were caught, until Cole came home, until life returned to something resembling normal. Lydia sent word to the sheriff, who assembled another posse and went after the Coulters. And she sent a telegram to Cole in Chicago, carefully worded so as not to worry him too much, but making it clear she needed him home. Cole received the telegram 3 weeks into his trip. He'd just finished the legal proceedings, had just claimed the inheritance that turned out to be even larger than advertised, $60,000 once all the assets were liquidated. He was in the attorney's office signing final papers when the telegram arrived. "Trouble at home. Coulters came. We're safe but need you. Come home soon. Love, L." Cole didn't even finish the paperwork. He shoved the signed documents at the attorney, grabbed the money draft,
and was on a train west within the hour. The journey that had taken him 3 weeks going, he made in 2 weeks coming back. He barely slept, couldn't eat, just pushed forward with single-minded determination to get home to his family. He rode up to the ranch on a hot July afternoon and found Lydia in the garden, Faith playing in the dirt beside her. They both looked fine, healthy, whole. But when Lydia looked up and saw him, the relief on her face told Cole everything he needed to know about how scared she'd been. He was off his horse and had her in his arms before she could stand. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you? I swear to God if they—" "We're fine." Lydia was crying, clinging to him. "We're fine. They came, but I sent them away. The sheriff caught them 2 days later. They're in jail now, waiting for trial." "You sent them away?" Cole pulled back to look at her. "How many?" "4. You faced down 4 armed men?" "I had the shotgun, and I bluffed about Pete and Tom being in the barn." Lydia wiped her eyes. "I was so scared, Cole. Not for me, but for Faith. If they'd found her, But they didn't, because you're you. Because you're the bravest, most stubborn, most incredible woman in Montana territory." Cole kissed her, hard and desperate. "I'm never leaving again. I don't care about money or inheritance or anything else. I'm staying right here where I can protect you." "We protected ourselves," Lydia corrected gently. "But I'm glad you're home." They went inside together, and Cole spent the next hour holding Faith, relearning the weight of her, the sound of her laugh, the way she grabbed his beard with sticky hands. Then, after Faith was down for her nap, he told Lydia about Chicago. The inheritance was real, $60,000, transferred into Cole's name. More money than he'd ever imagined having. The attorney had handled everything, had even arranged for the funds to be deposited in a Denver bank where they could access them easily. Cole's uncle had left a letter too, explaining his reasons. Guilt over abandoning his brother's son, regret for years lost, hope that this money could somehow make amends. "He said I reminded him of my father," Cole told Lydia. "Said the family was wrong to turn their backs on us just because I was big. Said he wished he'd been braver." Cole's voice roughened. Took him dying to find that courage, but at least he found it. "What do you want to do with the money?" Lydia asked. "Secure our future. Faith's education. Expand the ranch. Maybe buy your uncle's land when he's ready to retire. Combine the properties." Cole took Lydia's hand. "But also, I want to do something good. Something that matters. These past weeks in Chicago, I saw poverty like I've never seen. Children with nothing. Families struggling. And I kept thinking about how lucky we are. How we have so much." "What are you suggesting?" "A school. Here in Silver Creek. A real school, not just the little one-room thing they have now. A school that can teach any child, rich or poor, big or small. A place where kids like Faith can learn to be strong and kind and brave, like her mother." Lydia felt tears prick her eyes. "That's beautiful. That's what you do to me. Make me want to be better. Make me believe we can change things." Cole pulled her close. "We'll still keep plenty for ourselves, for Faith's future. But some of it should go toward making sure other kids get the chances we're giving our daughter." Over the next months, they made it happen. Cole donated $10,000 to build the Silver Creek School, a proper building with multiple classrooms, books, supplies, and a teacher brought in from Denver. The town was stunned. The same man they'd once called a monster was now their greatest benefactor. The same woman they'd pitied was now managing one of the most successful ranches in the territory. The school opened in October, almost 2 years to the day after Cole and Lydia's wedding. The whole town turned out for the ceremony. Faith, now walking and talking in the way 1-year-olds do, toddled around making friends with every child she met, and Lydia stood with Cole, watching their daughter's future take shape, and felt something settle in her chest. They'd done it. They'd taken every obstacle, size difference, dangerous pregnancy, outlaws, absent family, fear and doubt in a town full of naysayers, and they'd overcome it all. Not because it was easy, not because they were lucky, but because they'd chosen each other, chosen to fight for their love, chosen to believe that impossible was just another word for a challenge they hadn't conquered yet. But life wasn't finished testing them. The final challenge came in November, when a con man arrived in Silver Creek calling himself Nathaniel Tanner, and claiming to be Cole's long-lost cousin. He had papers, forged but convincing, saying he was entitled to half of Cole's inheritance. Said there had been a mistake in the will, that he'd been wrongfully excluded, that the courts in Chicago were reviewing the case. It was all lies, of course, but lies wrapped in enough legal language to be dangerous. Nathaniel hired a local attorney, filed paperwork, started making noise about taking the Tanners to court. And he was smooth, this con man. Charming and well-dressed, and exactly the kind of person who could convince a jury that he deserved a share of the Tanner fortune. "We need to fight this," Cole's attorney advised. "Get our own lawyers involved. This could drag on for months, maybe years." But Lydia had another idea. She invited Nathaniel to the ranch for dinner. Cole thought she was crazy, but he trusted her enough to go along with it. They set the table with their finest dishes, cooked a meal that could feed 10 people, and welcomed the con man into their home like he was family. Nathaniel was all smiles and false warmth. "Cousin Cole, and this must be your lovely wife. I've heard so much about you both." "Have you?" Lydia smiled sweetly. "How interesting, since we've heard nothing about you until last week." "Yes, well, I've been traveling. Business keeps me quite busy." Nathaniel sat at their table, accepted wine, complimented the food. "But family is so important, don't you think? And when I learned about Uncle's inheritance, about how there'd been an oversight with the will, well, I knew I had to come set things right." They ate dinner making small talk. Nathaniel spun elaborate stories about his travels, his business ventures, his tragic life story. He was good, Lydia had to admit. If she didn't know better, she might have believed him. Finally, over coffee, Lydia said, "Mr. Tanner, or should I call you cousin, I have a proposition for you." "Oh?" "You claim you're entitled to half of Cole's inheritance, $30,000. Lydia set down her cup. "I'm prepared to offer you $5,000 right now if you sign papers releasing all claims to the estate and leave Montana Territory." Nathaniel's eyes gleamed. "5,000? That's hardly... It's 5,000 more than you'll get when we prove you're a fraud." Lydia's voice was pleasant, but her eyes were steel. "You see, I've already sent telegrams to Chicago. My husband's attorney there is investigating your claims. And I'm quite sure he's going to find that your papers are forged, that you have no legal right to anything, and that impersonating a family member to claim inheritance is a federal crime." Nathaniel's smile faltered. "I don't know what you're suggesting. I'm suggesting that you're a con man, a good one, but not good enough." Lydia stood up, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a telegram. "This arrived this morning from Chicago. Your real name is Nathan Black. You've pulled this scheme in 3 other states, and there are warrants out for your arrest in 2 of them." The con man went pale. That's not... You have 2 choices." Lydia's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "Take the $5,000, sign the papers, and disappear. Or I turn this telegram over to Sheriff Morrison, and you spend the next 10 years in prison. Your choice. You have 60 seconds to decide." Nathaniel looked at Cole, who'd been silent through this whole exchange.